Chapter 1263 seemingly wanted to eliminate her multiple times, even when Si Yihan was still there. Not to mention now that Si Yihan was missing with his fate unknown. You're Audio's confidant. You'd also be in danger if you returned to the Si residence, Yi Wanwan said while looking at Sui. However, Sui helplessly smiled and said, Miss Wanwan, no need to worry about me. My father predicted this outcome when Si Mingli returned, so he swallowed his pride and was the first to pledge fealty to Si Mingli, along with the entire Su family. I was also forced to swear to be loyal to Si Mingli against my conscience. Hence, Si Mingli treats the Su family quite well and isn't harsh on us. Yi Wanwan nodded when she heard Su Yi's explanation. This was actually a fairly smart method. Since Si Mingli dared to return, Su Yi had to be well prepared. Now, Si Mingli teamed up with the Qin family and took complete control of the Si family. The current Si family is under Si Mingli and Qin Ruoshi's rule. This nearly irreversible situation can only be resolved if Ninth Master returns, Su family said with a sigh. It was easier said than done. Si Yihan had disappeared for so many days already. He would have already been found if he could be found. Even Su Yi wondered whether an accident happened to Si Yihan, and if he was dead already. I understand. You'll have a big burden for a while. You mustn't act rashly in the Si family. It'd be best if you had a chance to take grandmother out. As for Audio, I'll look for him, Yi Wanwan said after some contemplation. Whether it was for her background, the current situation in the Si family, or herself, she needed to find Si Yihan. Miss Wanwan, Si Mingli is still busy cleaning the mess in the Si family right now, so he shouldn't have time to do anything to you. Sui looked at Yi Wanwan. However, after Si Mingli stabilizes things in the Si family, I'm afraid he won't spare you. It'd be best for you to leave this place and find a place to wait out the storm. No need to worry about me. I'll be careful. Yi Wanwan gave Sui a smile for his kind reminder. So many people wanted her life. One more wouldn't matter. It's late, I'll head back now. Otherwise Si Mingli and Qin Ruoshi will get suspicious, Sui said. Yi Wanwan nodded and stood up, escorting Sui out of the little house of Rose. After Sui left, Yi Wanwan involuntarily fell into contemplation. Based on the current situation, she had to find Si Yihan, and all the clues pointed to one place, the independent state. Yi Wanwan dialed Xiezhi's number with one last ray of hope. However, his phone still couldn't be reached. When Yi Wanwan first discovered something happened to Si Yihan, she tried to contact Xiezhi and Lin Ke, but both of them were coincidentally abroad and couldn't be reached. It was though all her connections with Si Yihan were broken overnight. It appeared the only method left was to find Si Yihan. At the same time, in the independent state, at a certain capital of crime that was secluded from the world, a man in an elegant, snow-white suit with his hand supporting his head was sitting above a hall. There was a faint, boy-next-door smile that was gentle like the spring breeze hanging on his exquisite face. Occasional chatter could be heard from the dimly lit hall below him. Chapter 1264, Emperor Ji. The Fearless Alliance is growing more and more impudent. Several patrician families loyal to us were exterminated by the Fearless Alliance overnight without a chicken surviving. They're simply daring, a middle-aged man indignantly exclaimed as he looked at Emperor Ji. Another person echoed in agreement. That's right. Ever since the president of the Fearless Alliance went missing, the Fearless Alliance hasn't been as prosperous as before. If you consent, we can immediately wage war against the Fearless Alliance, Emperor Ji. Fearless Alliance, is it? An inexplicable smile lightly rose on the man's ethereal and exquisite face. His smiling face looked like it came from a painting, and wielded an unworldly aura. He looked like he was harmless and unimposing, but no one dared to slight or ignore the man due to the superior aura that hung around him. After all, this person was the sovereign of Europe's entire underground syndicate, and the heir of the Ji family, one of the four great clans of the independent state. Emperor Ji Xiuran. When Fearless Alliance was mentioned, the man's eyes dimmed, and he became absent-minded, as though he was lost in his thoughts and was reminiscing the past. Worryless, the man muttered gently. Emperor Ji, how should we deal with the Fearless Alliance? A certain man asked with a frown. Leave them be. the man said indifferently as he returned to reality. The middle-aged man was startled briefly before his expression shifted. Emperor Ji, several martial patrician families under me were exterminated by the Fearless Alliance. Forget about me. But I'm just afraid it'll humiliate you later. That's not so good, right? I said leave them be. The man had a harmless smile, but it was precisely this smile that made the middle-aged man's heart pound wildly and cold sweat seep from his forehead. The man in front of them was a legendary character in the independent state, and was the emperor of underground Europe. He was young, but he established the underground rules of Europe with his own hands, and became the emperor of the underworld in both name and reality. This signature smile might look harmless, but it was actually. Without any surprise, the middle-aged man kept silent as soon as he saw this scary smile. Sitting in this seat above them, the man reached underneath his jacket and took out an old photo. The photo looked aged but remained perfectly preserved. A moment later, Emperor Ji asked a woman with extremely stunning looks in the hall, "Is there news of the person I'm looking for?" "There isn't." The woman walked up and shook her head. "Emperor Ji." The woman gently placed her snow-white hand on the man's arm with adoration and reverence brimming from her face. "She's been gone for so many years already. And she had a child with another man. Why haven't you forgotten about her yet? Even we can't find her, so perhaps she's already dead. Emperor Ji, why can't you see the people beside you?" The man's smiling gaze landed on the stunning woman in front of him. "Is the person beside me you?" The woman looked joyful when she heard that. However, before she could say anything, the man grabbed her neck in a death grip. Her legs immediately left the ground. She was picked up by her neck, and was hanging in the air. The woman grew extremely terrified as she fearfully stared at the man who still maintained his faint smile. But she didn't dare to struggle at all. Scram! The man flicked his arms slightly and tossed the woman into the air. Chapter 1265 Bang! The stunning woman heavily crashed onto the ground. At that moment, a young man opened the door of the hall and entered slowly. The man wore a black suit with an extraordinary aura. Judging from his looks, he was of both Western and Asian descent. Emperor Ji. The man walked to the base of Emperor Ji's chair, his bearing refined, and he bowed slightly to Emperor Ji. The faint smile returned to the man's face, and his gaze shifted. The hall turned completely silent when its occupants saw the refined man dressed in a suit. One of the 8 gods under Emperor Ji, Skeleton. "Skeleton, tell me," Emperor Ji said with a light chuckle. The man in a suit, Skeleton, nodded and thought over his words before reporting to Emperor Ji. "Emperor Ji, we've thoroughly investigated the situation with the Nye family. The Nye family's second miss has indeed returned to the Nye family, and they've conducted DNA testing and confirmed that she is second Miss Worryless Nye. However, the Nye family currently has the news under lockdown, and hasn't publicized this matter yet." "Oh, is that so?" Emperor Ji's lips turned up with an odd smile when he heard Skeleton's report. "Emperor Ji, since we've confirmed that Miss Worryless has returned, should we prepare to visit her?" Skeleton asked. "No need," Emperor Ji said dryly. "The genuine can't become fake, but the fake also can't become genuine." Skeleton's eyes turned icy. "Emperor Ji is saying that the second miss who showed up at the Nye family isn't the real Miss Worryless?" "Miss Worryless is Emperor Ji's fiancée, and you and Miss Worryless are childhood sweethearts, so you know Miss Worryless better than Patriarch Nye and Madame Nye. If that girl really is the real Miss Worryless, there's no way she would stay inside the Nye residence for so long," a certain higher-up said with a chuckle. Emperor Ji didn't respond to him and merely said with a smile, "How interesting. A fake Worryless appeared in the Nye family, and could deceive the outstandingly intelligent Madame Nye. That third miss is probably the only one in the entire Nye family who is capable of doing this," Skeleton said. "Third miss of the Nye family, Nye Linglong, an orphan who Miss Worryless rescued from a patrician family when she was young. Nye Linglong was originally a daughter of some small martial patrician family in the independent state, but her clan was extinguished because her parents offended a great patrician family. Only Nye Linglong was rescued by Miss Worryless. After that, Miss Worryless meticulously took care of her and brought her back to the Nye family. Madame Nye saw that she was well-behaved and clever, So Madame Nye took her in as an adopted daughter. That's right. Ji Shiran smiled with mockery in his eyes. However, this Nye Linglong doesn't seem to be grateful in the slightest. Although Nye Linglong became the third miss of the Nye family, she had to live in worryless shadows the entire time, so she probably became disloyal a long time ago out of greed. Emperor Ji, since it's like that, a certain higher-up's eyes resembled daggers. If the second miss in the Nye family was really an imposter, then they could expose her to the patriarch of the Nye family if they had concrete evidence. No need to interfere with the Nye family's business. The man above them shook his head before the higher-up finished speaking. Emperor Ji, ever since Miss Worryless went missing, that Nye Linglong has wanted to see you every day. I wager she's nothing good since she wants to snatch her own sister's fiancé. An elderly man guffawed. Emperor Ji didn't reply to him, and merely intently looked at the high-spirited girl in the photo in his hand. Worryless. Chapter 1266. At the same time, in China, Yi Wanwan told Heidi and his group to scout for news of Yi Shouting and Yi Mufan. So little Loli and Heidi left the little house of Rose early that morning, and didn't return until noon. Heidi first took a sip of water before approaching Yi Wanwan and saying, "Master, there's news." "What is it?" Yi Wanwan looked at Heidi. "Master, I have news about the people you asked about. I made many friends lately, and one of them happened to be responsible for this case. Although there's an adequate amount of evidence, this case was temporarily put on hold due to Yi Hongwei and Tan Yilan, and because there were still some questionable points about the case, so their case won't be heard for at least half a year," Heidi said. Yi Wanwan was pensive when she heard that. Just as Heidi said, surveillance was considered part of the evidence, but it needed further investigation. Moreover, grandfather and grandmother both didn't want anything to happen to Yi Shouting and Yi Mufan, so they probably communicated with Liang Meixian. Yi Wanwan didn't know what kind of compromise they reached, but it gave her sufficient time. This was good for Yi Wanwan. In truth, if she focused on Steward Huang and Liang Meixian, she should be able to obtain enough evidence to release Yi Shouting and Yi Mufan regardless of the method she used. However, Steward Huang and Liang Meixian were very cautious and never slipped even when they were alone. It was completely unrealistic if she wanted to use normal methods to make Steward Huang and Liang Meixian admit they were the masterminds and hired hitmen to kill Yi Shaoan. Thankfully, the hearing was delayed for half a year, so she still had time. However, it was inadvisable for her to continue following Liang Meixian and Steward Huang. If she inadvertently alerted them, she wouldn't be able to find an opening. She had to wait until the two of them relaxed completely. Currently, there was no room for her in both the Si family and Yi family, so remaining in China wasn't a wise move. Otherwise, as soon as Si Mingli was ready to target her, she might implicate her mother, Liang Wanjun. Leaving for a period of time was her best option. If she wanted to uncover her background and resolve the problems with the Si and Yi families, she had to find Si Yihan. And all of the clues pointed to one place, the independent state. "Master, how do you plan on handling this matter? Do you need us to do anything else?" Old Jiang asked Yi Wanwan. "Leave it be for now." Yi Wanwan was silent for a moment before saying, "I might have to leave for some time." "Leave?" The little Loli's eyes flashed. Where is Master going?" "The independent state." Yi Wanwan's eyes were determined. Currently, her father and brother were framed. The Si family was under the control of Si Mingli and Qin Ruoshi, and Si Yihan went missing. There was no point for her to remain in China by herself. If she wanted to resolve everything, the only thing she could do was temporarily leaving China and heading to the independent state to look for Si Yihan. Grandfather and grandmother were acting as deterrents for her father and brother, so Yi Wanwan wasn't too worried about them. They would just have to endure some mistreatment for now. After she found Si Yihan and returned from the independent state, she would definitely take care of Steward Huang and Liang Meixian, and ensure justice for Yi Shouting and Yi Mufan. Otherwise, she would barely be able to protect herself, let alone protecting them. Chapter 1267. 1267. The Independent State. Heidi, the little Loli and their group were all taken back when they heard Yi Wanwan's words. They naturally knew about the independent state, the haven for mercenaries and the golden place for martial arts. Master, we've always aspired to go to the independent state, but we never had the guts to go, Heidi said with a smile. The independent state had always been xenophobic. If outsiders entered the independent state without a permit, the consequences were unimaginable. Even if a person had a permit, it was extremely possible for a person to lose their life in a place like the independent state if they weren't careful. It was a nearly lawless place. Since the beginning of the independent state's existence, all the rules were established by the independent state's 4 great patrician families and the martial arts union. One of the laws was, the independent state doesn't permit anyone to bring modern weapons, whether small or big, like a gun into the independent state. If anyone is caught doing so, any resident of the independent state is allowed to beat the violator to death. In the independent state, carrying weapons was a form of humiliation to them. This was why most countries didn't interfere with the independent state. The independent state was considered its own independent world with its own laws. Moreover, laws that disallowed the carrying of guns and producing firearms weren't a threat to any country in the world. So there wasn't a single powerful country that wanted to conspire against the independent state. For example, if a few powerful countries wanted to eradicate the independent state, once the independent state was destroyed, all the martial art experts and patrician families would flood into other countries. At that point, without restraint from the independent state's rules, the displacement of the ancient, martial arts patrician families with immense backgrounds wouldn't be beneficial to any country. What was more frightening was that these ancient, martial arts patrician families wouldn't have to obey the independent state's laws anymore. The implications of allowing them to use guns and firearms were too horrible to imagine. Since the independent state existed until now without any regulations or provocation from other countries, it must have its own complete set of rules and system. Master, do you need us to accompany you? The little loli asked Yuanwan. Yuanwan contemplated for a moment before shaking her head. No need this time. Heidi and old Jiang might have some knowledge about the independent state, but they had never been there. Yuanwan herself was clueless about the situation with the independent state, so having more people there would actually be a hindrance. They didn't say anything more upon seeing that Yuanwan didn't plan on bringing them. The independent state was an especially unique entity and was completely different from any country. Rumors said that martial arts were very prosperous in the independent state, but they were a bit behind on things other than martial arts. For example, magic in the independent state was at least a decade behind China. Any great magician with talents in magic tricks would be able to earn a lot of money in the independent state, and would be respected. Of course, that was if the great magicians who dared to go to the independent state weren't discovered to be outsiders by the residents of the independent state, or didn't lack a permit. Otherwise, they would earn money, but whether they could retain their life to spend it would be a completely different matter. Except for that, the gambling scene in the independent state wasn't weaker than that of big cities in some of the powerful countries, like Las Vegas. Also, underground boxing competitions were also very popular in the independent state. There were also matches between humans and ferocious beasts on top of human versus human boxing matches. Chapter 1268. 1268 from Mr. Mu. Yuanwan learned that the independent state was different from anything else in the world. It was almost a dream world. Of course, to the majority of people, it was akin to an inferno hell. Whether it was heaven or hell depended on your status and identity. In reality, Yuanwan really wanted to see that enigmatic place for herself even if she didn't need to find Si Yihan. After deciding to go to the independent state, she originally wanted to ask Nameless Nya and his group for help. However, all their numbers turned into blank numbers, and they seemed to have stopped using WeChat too. Yuanwan sent them many messages, but no one responded. Yuanwan felt a bit helpless. Nameless Nya and his group went back too soon. If they went slightly later, she could have tagged along. Going to the independent state wasn't an easy thing for her without the company of Nameless Nya and his group. First of all, she was completely clueless about the method and path to go to the independent state. The independent state wasn't a public country. If ordinary people wanted to go to the independent state by themselves, it would be incredibly difficult. She had no idea what flights to take. Moreover, she heard that she had to have a visa permit when she was in the independent state. Otherwise, the outcome would be too horrible to contemplate if she was discovered without a permit by the martial arts union's search team. Of course, she also didn't have any better methods under the current circumstances, so she had to take a risk and head to the independent state anyway. The longer she delayed things, the more disadvantageous it would be for herself. Yi Xiaoting and Yi Mufan. Once Si Mingli and Qin Ruoxi controlled the Si family completely, they would start seeking retribution for their bad blood. And it wouldn't be beneficial for her at all to clash with them head-on. After contemplating it for a long time, Yi Wanwan ended up dialing Mr. Mu's number. "Miss Yi, why do you want to go to the independent state?" Mu Suifeng sounded very astonished from the other end of the phone. "I'm sorry, I can't explain right now. I hope you can help me with this." In truth, the route to the independent state wasn't some large secret. It wasn't impossible for people who deliberately wanted to find out. It was just that outsiders didn't dare to trespass. It wasn't some significant matter for Mu Suifeng to tell Yi Wanwan the route to the independent state. In the end, under Yi Wanwan's request, Mu Suifeng told her the complicated route and repeatedly warned her not to travel to the independent state simply out of curiosity. After hanging up, Yi Wanwan looked at the route map she wrote on her notebook, and she felt her head aching. Aside from transferring a few flights, she also had to ride a ship. It would take at least several days for her to go from China to the independent state. However, her unease about this strange place abated as soon as she recalled that people familiar to her like Nameless Nia, and especially Tang Tang, were in the independent state. Moreover, Si Yihan had to also be in some corner of the independent state right now. Yi Wanwan packed and settled things in the following few days and took care of her business in China. The company was on the right track already, so no big incidents would occur for the next little while with Han Xianyu and Fei Yang watching over things. As for Liang Wanjun, she kept her mother company for a few days, so that Liang Wanjun wouldn't worry. She also told her mother that she would be going on a business trip for a while, and told her to pay attention to her health, to not worry about Yi Xiaoting and Yi Mufan's case, and to wait for her to return. After taking care of everything, Yi Wanwan determinedly left Little House of Rose and headed to the airport. Chapter 1269. On the way to the airport, Yi Wanwan was looking at the scenery outside the window when she detected something amiss. She frowned. "Driver, this isn't the way to the airport, no?" Soon, the taxi turned into the forest on the side. The driver chuckled eerily. "This isn't the road to the airport. It's the road to hell." A chilly glint flickered through Yi Wanwan's eyes. Without waiting for the driver to react, Yi Wanwan opened the back door and jumped out of the car. At the same time, the trunk of the taxi was kicked open from the inside, and two men in black appeared from the trunk. The two men in black were extremely fast and blocked Yi Wanwan within seconds. The driver languidly opened his door and walked toward Yi Wanwan. The taxi driver, as well as those two men in black, looked very unfamiliar. Yi Wanwan had never seen them. "Seemingly sent you?" Yi Wanwan probed with her brows furrowed. The driver snorted at that. "Seemingly? I don't know him. It looks like you have quite a few enemies. Who are you?" Yi Wanwan constrained her emotions. "People who will reap your soul and steal your life." The driver snorted again and sent a look at the two men in black. The two men in black immediately nodded and walked toward Yi Wanwan together. Swish. One of the men in black's hands shot toward Yi Wanwan the second he got close. The wind from his attack arrived before the palm itself. The man in black was extremely fast, and a fierce force accompanied his movements. Normal people wouldn't be able to block it at all. Even Yi Wanwan reflexively dodged backward, and didn't dare to meet it head-on. A grumble was heard from the air in front of Yi Wanwan, making the strength behind the man's strike apparent. Yi Wanwan's gaze didn't drift from the man in black for the slightest second. The strength of these three people, including the driver, was unfathomable. They were countless times stronger than the other mercenaries she encountered earlier. These three people looked unfamiliar to Yi Wanwan. She had never seen them, and they didn't have any existing conflicts. At Si Mingli and Qin Ruoxi's level, they probably couldn't command these three people even if they took over the Si family. Also, from this driver's reaction, It didn't look like he knew seemingly. Since they weren't sent by seemingly and Qin Ruashi, who sent them? Yi Wanwan had an abrupt realization that the mastermind behind the assassins she once encountered also wasn't seemingly or Qin Ruashi. Were these three people from the same group as those assassins? Before Yi Wanwan could think about anything else, the man in black attacked again. His speed this time was more astonishing than before. Yi Wanwan instinctively turned around to flee. The man in black was too strong, so there was no way she could defeat him if she fought him head-on. Considering her current skills in martial arts, she would be beaten mercilessly. However, a figure walked around the corner before Yi Wanwan could take more than a few steps, and she ran into the person. Feng Shuani. Yi Wanwan halted and looked at the person in front of her with surprise. It was none other than Feng Shuani. Feng Shuani first glanced at Yi Wanwan before dryly sweeping his eyes over the three people behind her. Long time no see. Feng Shuani greeted her with a light chuckle as he looked back at Yi Wanwan. Chapter 1270. 1270. As for why Feng Shuani suddenly stopped stuttering, Yi Wanwan didn't think too deeply about it in this current situation. She was merely confused about why Feng Shuani was suddenly here as the head captain of the Xi family's hidden guards. Oh, you have helpers? The man dressed as a chauffeur smiled faintly and walked forward. I advise you to refrain from interfering in this matter. It's none of your business. Feng Shuani glanced at the driver, but didn't say anything. He took out a cigarette and lit it. A faint ring of smoke puffed out of his mouth. And the driver didn't waste any more words. He stepped toward Feng Shuani and swung a fist at Feng Shuani's temples lightning fast. It would be difficult for talented martial artists to dodge this swift punch, let alone normal people. A hit to the temples would lead to death without a doubt. The driver was too fast. He was so fast that Yi Wanwan didn't have any time to react and could merely look at Feng Shuani anxiously. Boom. A loud boom like an explosive clap of thunder sent her eardrums reverberating with pain. To Yi Wanwan's disbelief, Feng Shuani lifted his right arm, and without much visible movement, he caught the driver's punch. You. The driver assessed Feng Shuani with shock. The driver and the two men were all from a mercenary labor union from the independent state. Someone hired them to come to China to kill a woman with a large sum of money. Yi Wanwan was this woman. They didn't expect her to have such an expert by her side, however. The more they looked at this helper, the more familiar they found him, as though they'd seen him somewhere before. The other two men in black thought of something and looked at each other, realization surfacing in their eyes. Could it be you are? How's that possible? The driver called out in shock, his expression shifting. Feng Shuani was called Tartarus in the mercenary world. Rumors said he was the confidant of the legendary mercenary captain, nameless Nia. Who sent you here? The higher-ups of the Nia family or? Feng Shuani's voice was bone-chilling as he looked at the driver. However, the driver and the two men in black kept their lips sealed. Forget it if you won't tell me. Feng Shuani shrugged and turned to look at the dumbfounded Yi Wanwan. Where are you going? The airport. Yi Wanwan automatically replied. Why are you going to the airport? Forget it, go do your own thing, Feng Shuani said after taking another drag from his cigarette. What about you? Yi Wanwan asked with a furrow of her brows. These people were sent by Seemingly. I'll handle it, don't worry about it, Feng Shuani said. Seemingly. Yi Wanwan was startled. Were the driver and the two men in black really sent by Seemingly? However, Yi Wanwan wouldn't argue about it since Feng Shuani said that. Without waiting for Yi Wanwan to say anything else, a dagger appeared in Feng Shuani's hand out of nowhere. After a glint of the blade, the three people's necks were slashed open instantly, and they collapsed on the ground like a mudslide as they breathed their last breaths. How weak. They could be anything but just had to be assassins, Feng Shuani dryly commented. Weak? Yi Wanwan's lips twitched. Those three people were immensely strong to her, but Feng Shuani called them weak. Was this still the little stutterer who kept haggling her, and made her teach him a few moves back at the Xi residence? Only then did Yi Wanwan realize. Feng Shuani hadn't stuttered at all. Chapter 1271. Didn't you stutter? Yi Wanwan asked Feng Shuani with a frown. If Feng Shuani wasn't a stutterer, then why did he pretend to be a stutterer in the C family? And how could he explain his terrifying martial arts skills? I stutter. Feng Shuani looked at Yi Wanwan. I just cured it. My wage is $50,000 a month as the head captain of the C family's hidden guards. So isn't it easy to cure my stuttering? What about your martial arts skills then? Yi Wanwan asked. I'm special and gifted, a rare genius in the world. Plus, I worked hard perseveringly, so I finally became an expert. This is all very reasonable, right? Feng Shuani said after pondering it. Yi Wanwan's lips twitched at Feng Shuani's explanation. Couldn't he make up a better excuse? Why was it so full of holes? Do you think I'm an idiot? Yi Wanwan was speechless. I don't. I'm telling the truth. Feng Shuani took another drag. Feng Shuani's expression turned slightly off at Yi Wanwan's overwhelming suspicion. Without waiting for Yi Wanwan to say anything more, Feng Shuani hastily said, I'm the head captain of the C family. I don't have time to chat with you. I have an ongoing mission still, so I have to go back now. There's a lot of trouble on the outside lately, so don't run around needlessly. Feng Shuani escaped without a trace instantly. After Feng Shuani disappeared into the depths of the forest, he put out his cigarette, a chilly glint in his eyes. Those three people just now weren't assassins sent by seemingly. They came from the independent state, and if he was correct, they might be related to that fake second miss. However, Feng Shuani still couldn't figure out how other people knew about Yi Wanwan's existence. Could it be that someone leaked the news out and let someone know Yi Wanwan was the second miss of the Nia family, so they acted upon it? Feng Shuani guessed that the higher-ups of the Nia family purposefully got someone to pretend to be the second miss, worryless Nia, and infiltrate the Nia family. They wanted to use the fake second miss to obtain some very tempting benefits. Second Miss Worryless Nia left the Nia family when she was young and rarely returned home. So she didn't see Madame Nia and the patriarch a lot. Moreover, Worryless Nia went missing for many years. A young woman would look very different from the little girl she once was, so it would be very difficult to identify Worryless Nia based on her looks, providing some people a chance to take advantage of this situation for personal gain. When Feng Shuani saw that assassins from the independent state specifically came to China from the independent state to assassinate Yi Wanwan, he knew this matter was extremely serious. Who leaked the news of Yi Wanwan being worryless Nia? And who had they leaked it to? And who was it that had no scruples against taking Yi Wanwan's life all the way in China? Could it be? A figure surfaced in Feng Shuani's mind, causing his expression to darken. Before Feng Shuani thought too deeply about it, he suddenly recalled that Yi Wanwan said she was about to head to the airport. Shit. She can't possibly be going to the independent state, right? Feng Shuani's expression drastically changed. He stayed in China precisely to protect Yi Wanwan. There was clearly someone from the independent state who wanted Yi Wanwan's life, so if the mastermind discovered Yi Wanwan was in the independent state, she would truly be in a perilous situation from all sides. No one could protect her if anything happened. Yi Wanwan originally wanted to chase after Feng Shuani and interrogate him, but he was too fast and disappeared without a trace in an instant. Her pursuit was futile. Yi Wanwan had no choice but to turn around and head to the airport. There wasn't much time left before the boarding time for her flight, so she would have to wait until she returned from the independent state to find an answer for Feng Shuani's current state. When she arrived at the airport, her timing was perfect and Yi Wanwan successfully boarded the plane. Chapter 1272. The next few days were a taxing adventure. Yi Wanwan changed several planes, crossed the great ocean, and lost count of the number of ships she rode. She swore she never knew there was a place on Earth that would take so much effort to reach. The nearest countries to the independent state didn't have any flights to the independent state. It wasn't even on the map. Whether it was entering the independent state or leaving it, there were only three methods. The first method, ferry. The second method, private plane. The third method, swimming. About 81 days in the sea would do. Independent state. Fuck you. Yi Wanwan wrung the water from her clothes at a cave in some mountain. She really swam. From the coast into the sea and all the way to the independent state. The ferry had an accident at the last moment, and the boat tilted and slowly sank. Then the ferry's staff contacted the rescue team of the independent state. Yi Wanwan had no choice but to jump into the waters. She wasn't dumb. She didn't have a permit to enter the independent state. The rescue team would probably kill her when they arrived. Thankfully, the accident location of the ferry was just several hundred meters away from the independent state. After reaching the shore, patrols and hounds covered the coast and harbor, serving as customs agents. Yi Wanwan saw that everyone entering the independent state showed their permits. Without a permit, Yi Wanwan's only option was to flee into the nearby mountains. Inside the cave, hunger and fatigue enveloped her. Yi Wanwan's passport, ID card, bank cards, and etc. were all lost at sea, and all that she had on her was the gun she bought for self-defense from a neighboring country of the independent state. Although the independent state banned every kind of firearm, she didn't plan to throw the gun away. First, she didn't have a permit. Second, she didn't know anything about the independent state, so she felt more confident with a gun on her. She would be a fool to throw it away. After some time, Yi Wanwan felt her eyes grow heavy, and she fell into a deep sleep. Many scenes surfaced in her dreams. Grandpa's blurry face, and some very strange but also incredibly familiar faces. In her dream, she seemed to have seen an extraordinarily looking and beautiful man who looked like he walked out of a painting. And that man was her fiancé, who had been engaged to her since she was young. She trailed behind that man every day. But that beautiful smile akin to a spring breeze didn't have any warmth in it. He permitted her to approach, but never showed any other emotion toward her. She wanted to be with him for the rest of their lives, but he merely treated her like a child and considered her a younger sister. The grief and sadness in her dream were too real. So much so that Yi Wanwan felt her heart throbbing in pain. In the end, she left him and went far away. She went to many places, met many people, and did many ridiculous things. She later met another person. It seemed to have been an amorous encounter too. Although this amorous encounter wasn't that cute, their interactions made her feel really warm. Yi Wanwan woke up the next morning at dawn. She opened her eyes and felt pain rippling through her head. The salty smell from the ocean water covered her body. She wanted to try her best to recall her dream from that night, but couldn't recall anything no matter what. Intuition told her that her dream was very important to her, but she helplessly couldn't recall anything from it. After she felt slightly better, she got up and left the cave, entering the forest. She didn't know what region this forest belonged to, but it wasn't too large thankfully, so Yi Wanwan managed to leave the forest after half a day. Chapter 1273. 1273. Yi Wanwan was utterly clueless about the independent state. She previously looked for information related to the independent state on the internet back in China, but she didn't find anything. Around noontime, Yi Wanwan entered a city-resembling region. The buildings in this city in the independent state were very similar to those in China. There was heavy traffic, a crisscrossing of streets and an endless flow of people, creating a bustling sight. Rather simple and unadorned weapon shops could be found on any spot on the street, and she even saw a half-naked man holding an iron hammer, striking raw iron into shape. Yi Wanwan walked and stopped, intense curiosity hanging from her face, as though she discovered a brand new world. Although the independent state had a very similar style to China, there was something innately different between the two. The martial arts culture was very intense and vibrant, so the independent state carried an old and historical martial arts air. And some signature buildings had a more Western style, like the arena, the beast combat arena, etc. Yi Wanwan could sense an extremely unique, foreign culture as she walked through the independent state. Is this Tang Tang, and nameless Nia and his group's hometown? Yi Wanwan murmured as she surveyed her surroundings. It had to be said that this was quite a mystical country. A moment later, Yi Wanwan stopped in front of a restaurant. There was a strong fragrance of food emanating from the restaurant. It was only then that the starving Yi Wanwan realized she hadn't eaten in 2 whole days. When she rode the ferry to the independent state from a neighboring country, she barely ate anything out of seasickness. Later, the boat had an accident and Yi Wanwan jumped into the sea, losing everything, her ID and bank cards and such, in the sea, except for a gun. She was penniless right now. Even beggars were probably richer than her. She was in a foreign country, lost everything, and hadn't eaten for 2 days. Was there anything more frightening than this? Of course there was. This foreign country was the independent state. Soon, she saw some men and women wearing strange white clothes with a very solemn-looking emblem hanging on their chests and the giant characters, Martial Arts Union, printed on their backs. The official personnel of the Martial Arts Union has been showing up a bit more often in the last few days. Some pedestrians stopped walking when they saw the members of the Martial Arts Union, and they took out their independent state permits. Some time ago, some outsiders smuggled in and were discovered by the Martial Arts Union, so they're checking more diligently. I don't think it's just about the outsiders. The Fearless Alliance has been rather busy recently, and 6 nearby martial art patrician families were given a 7-kill order by the Fearless Alliance within a month. Many pedestrians' expressions drastically shifted when the 7-kill order was mentioned. Fearless Alliance was an extremely notorious union in the independent state, but it had an extremely terrible reputation. Even the 4 great clans of the independent state weren't willing to provoke it, let alone the normal martial art patrician families. The most prosperous period of the Fearless Alliance was probably 7 years ago. Under the leadership of the president of the Fearless Alliance, Bro Flattop, the Fearless Alliance became a haven for fugitives, and countless malicious and evil people fought between themselves to join the Fearless Alliance. Moreover, many years ago, a group of extremely senior SS-level mercenaries, who never followed the mercenary rules, also joined the Fearless Alliance. However, in recent years, the strength of the Fearless Alliance drastically dropped after the disappearance of the president of the Fearless Alliance, Bro Flattop, and was nothing like it was in the past. Even so, the words Fearless Alliance were still thunder to the listener's ears, akin to a nightmare, in the independent state. Chapter 1274. In the last month, the Fearless Alliance issued a 7-kill order to 6 different martial arts patrician families. Anyone who received a 7-kill order would be eradicated by the Fearless Alliance within 7 days without fail. Now, 4 families were already eradicated by the Fearless Alliance, and 2 remained. Why doesn't the Martial Arts Union eliminate a power like the Fearless Alliance? They're simply a pest. Eliminate? How could they? The independent state doesn't have a rule or law about this. The Fearless Alliance didn't use any firearms or disobey the Union's rules. According to the Fearless Alliance, this was a personal enmity, so the Martial Arts Union can't manage it. Anyway, who'd be willing to provoke the Fearless Alliance? The members of the Fearless Alliance are all fugitives, and they're a bunch of lunatics who don't care about their lives. Do you believe that if the Martial Arts Union dared to stick their nose in the Fearless Alliance's business, the Fearless Alliance wouldn't dare to wage a war with the Martial Arts Union? Yi Wanwan stood on the side, and was rather interested at the mention of the Fearless Alliance. She recalled the strong men she encountered in China. Those strong men used to be members of the Fearless Alliance, but were expelled because they spared a dog or something like that. After Yi Wanwan eavesdropped on the talk around her, she gained a basic understanding of the independent state's current situation. On the surface, the most powerful factions in the independent state were the 4 great martial arts patrician clans, Nye Ji Ling Shun, who controlled nearly half the independent state's resources. These 4 great clans were the tyrants of the independent state on the surface, and everyone knew about them. Amongst them, the Ji family was a bit unique in that the heir of the Ji family was also the emperor of Europe's entire underworld. Of course, the 4 great clans were merely the tyrannical patrician families of the independent state on the surface. There were also many hidden and mysterious ancient martial arts patrician families secluded from the world. There was also an official faction in the independent state aside from the 4 great clans. All of the rules were established by this official faction, the Martial Arts Union. The Martial Arts Union was responsible for menial duties like evicting outsiders and checking permits. Even the 4 great clans couldn't shake the position of the Martial Arts Union. Aside from the martial arts patrician families, the most distinguished part of the independent state was the Mercenary Academy. The Mercenary Academy was completely different from schools in normal countries. The Mercenary Academy trained cold and heartless mercenary experts. Many mercenaries higher than level S, aka the legendary mercenaries on the International Mercenary Chart, were trained by the Independent States Mercenary Academy. After gaining a basic understanding of the Independent States situation, Yuanwan couldn't help but marvel at the Independent State. The Independent State was probably an utterly unique entity in the entire world. Yuanwan suddenly realized that there was a family surnamed Nie among the 4 great tyrannical martial arts patrician families of the Independent State. She wondered whether the Nie patrician family had anything to do with nameless Nie. However, no one would probably believe her if she said nameless Nie, and his group had anything to do with the Nie family based on their impoverished looks. Yuanwan didn't think too much about it though. Even if nameless Nie was related to the Nie family, it sounded like something from a fairy tale for her to come into contact with someone on the Nie family's level. A tyrannical patrician family of the Independent State couldn't be visited by just anyone. Chapter 1275. Yuanwan stood in her spot and suddenly sensed something amiss. The gaze of a member of the martial arts union kept lingering on Yuanwan. Soon, the martial arts union member walked toward Yuanwan and surveyed her briefly before asking, "Which region are you from?" Yuanwan was startled. She just arrived at the Independent State, so she didn't know anything about the different regions of the Independent State. How could she name a region? The man frowned slightly at the lack of response from Yuanwan. "Your permit." An ominous feeling crawled over Yuanwan instantly. She didn't give that man from the martial arts union any time to react and fled faster than she had ever run in her life. How could she have a permit from the Independent State? How great was it that she was caught red-handed by a member of the martial arts union? If she couldn't show a permit, the consequences were unimaginable. She might even lose her life. There was no way Yuanwan would foolishly stay and argue with a member of the martial arts union. This was the Independent State. She wasn't so naive that she thought she could successfully bluff her way out of a pickle with the martial arts union. "I found a suspicious person," the man shouted behind him. Immediately, the members of the martial arts union chased after Yuanwan in groups, and every member was extremely fast. Although Yuanwan was fast, she was still too slow compared to her pursuers. If things continued like this, she'd be caught before long. In her haste, Yuanwan ran quicker, but a few seconds later, she slammed into the figure of someone in front of her. "Who are you?" The man who was slammed into had a deep frown as he looked at the person who ran into him with displeasure. However, he was briefly taken back when he saw the girl's appearance and felt his heartbeat speeding up. All those women who thought they were stunningly beautiful all became ordinary to him. The difference between these women and her was like day and night. She didn't have any makeup on her face, but her bare looks were already astonishing. Her flustered appearance elicited an inexplicable desire for him to protect her. "I'm sorry. Are you okay?" Yuanwan asked with a furrow of her brows as she looked at the nobly dressed man in front of her. Oh, I'm fine. It's nothing. My bones are rather strong. Did you get hurt?" the man asked. Why are the people from the Independent State different from what I imagined? Are they all so friendly?" She ran into someone, but he didn't blame her at all and started asking about her well-being instead. It appeared that the Independent State was quite a nice place, except for that martial arts union. However, the reality was that appearance was universally important no matter where a person was. "Sorry, I need to go." Yuanwan reflexively looked behind her and her expression shifted when she saw that the members of the martial arts union were about to catch up to her. The man followed her gaze and looked behind her. "The investigation team of the martial arts union," the man muttered with a pensive expression. This investigation team was mainly responsible for eliminating outsiders and checking for Independent State permits. Since she was being chased by the investigation team like this, she either didn't have a permit or she was an outsider. Based on how this girl was being pursued, she was most likely an outsider. Chapter 1276. 1276. He carefully surveyed Yuanwan's flustered appearance and his eyes glinted, realization dawning on him. He lightly asked, "You aren't from the Independent State, are you?" "Who said I'm not from the Independent State?" Yuanwan immediately retorted. I've been in the independent state since I was in my mom's womb. Then, do you have a permit? Which region are you from? The man asked with a smile. Yi Wanwan was too lazy to argue with him. If the members of the martial arts union caught up to her, it wouldn't be fun at all. Seeing that Yi Wanwan wanted to keep running, the man instantly blocked Yi Wanwan and shook his head. No outsiders have ever escaped from the hands of the martial arts union's investigation team. Follow me. Without giving Yi Wanwan time to think, the man led her to run forward. The man was very familiar with this area, so a series of twists and turns later, they entered a manor and escaped from the investigation team. At the manor, the man asked Yi Wanwan, "Excuse me, what's your name? How should I address you?" Yi Wanwan. Thank you for your help. Yi Wanwan didn't know the rules and customs of the independent state, so she cupped her fists, pretending like she knew what she was doing. The man chuckled. Miss Yi, you're welcome. I'm Zhou Wu. After a conversation with Zhou Wu, Yi Wanwan learned that Zhou Wu was the heir of a martial arts patrician family, and this was the Zhou residence. Yi Wanwan knew Zhou Wu didn't hold any malicious intentions toward her. If it wasn't for Zhou Wu stepping in today, her fate would have been inconceivable. It was quite unrealistic for her to successfully escape from the martial arts union's investigation team based on their speed. Miss Yi, I don't know whether you came to the independent state to sightsee or for something else, but you should prepare yourself. The independent state is very xenophobic and many outsiders die in the independent state, Zhou Wu said to Yi Wanwan. Then you aren't xenophobic? Yi Wanwan was curious. Zhou Wu shook his head. Don't be ridiculous, Miss Yi. My grandfather was also an outsider when he was young, but the independent state's rules were more relaxed back then, so my grandfather managed to establish the Zhou family in the independent state through hard work. Our Zhou family isn't xenophobic. We've been the same from the beginning. I see. Yi Wanwan nodded. No wonder Zhou Wu was willing to help her. Since Miss Yi doesn't have a permit, it'll be hard for you to walk around the independent state. If you don't mind, you can stay here for a few days, Miss Yi. Yi Wanwan didn't decline. She just arrived at the independent state, and was unfamiliar with this place and didn't know many things. Additionally, she lost everything, so she didn't even have a place to stay that night. That's too troublesome, right? Yi Wanwan said. Don't be polite, Miss Yi. As compensation for living here, tell us about the outside world, like China. Us people from the independent state are truly too far from our homeland, China. Except for the top 4 great clans of the independent state, nearly no one is willing to expend a huge effort to return to China. Zhou Wu replied with a smile. Amazing. They don't even know any recent news about China. Shortly after, Yi Wanwan followed Zhou Wu into the living room. The patriarch and madam of the Zhou family both arrived at the living room upon receiving news of their visitor. The patriarch and madam were both very polite toward Yi Wanwan, and kept asking about China. The patriarch of the Zhou family was born in the independent state and never left, so he was very curious about his native country, China. Yi Wanwan didn't hold back, and told them everything she knew. China has television. Television is, there are people inside and such. Yi Wanwan described to them as she ate the food prepared by Zhou Wu. Patriarch Zhou looked at Yi Wanwan with surprise. Our independent state also has television. Oh, right, China has cars, like the ones that people sit in. Patriarch Zhou was taken aback again. The independent state also has cars. Big cars, little cars, sports cars, race cars, go-karts. Their independent state wasn't some sealed-off fifth world country, alright. Chapter 1277. Yi Wanwan was a bit embarrassed when she saw the strange expressions of the patriarch and madam of the Zhou family. Come to think about it, the independent state was just as developed as the neighboring countries. Their entertainment scene was just lacking slightly. Aside from the lack of gun and firearm usage, the extent of independent states' technological advancement was fairly progressed. Of course, the independent state prioritized martial arts. To the people of the independent state, everything else was added on. Only martial arts were more important than the heavens. After correcting her mindset about the independent state being behind on everything, Yi Wanwan told the patriarch and madam of the Zhou family about the latest events in China, interesting them immensely. A while later, The patriarch of the Zhou family looked at Yi Wanwan and asked curiously, Miss Yi, you're Chinese. China is truly too distant from the independent state, but Miss Wanwan ignored this great distance and came to the independent state. Could it be that you came merely to sightsee? Although foreign tourists learned about the independent state's existence in the past, and secretly snuck into the independent state, their fates weren't too good. The independent state's xenophobia had intensified further and further in the past few decades. Yi Wanwan pondered for a moment before saying, To tell you the truth, I didn't come to the independent state to sightsee. I came here to find someone. Find someone. The patriarch and madam were both taken back by Yi Wanwan's answer. This was miraculously the first time they heard someone say they came to the independent state to find someone. Oh right. Yi Wanwan wrote down a phone number on a piece of paper and walked to the patriarch and madam. Excuse me, do you happen to know the region this phone number belongs to? This phone number was the number she found in Si Yihan's study. She previously used nameless Nia's phone to call it, but it later turned into an empty number, unable to be reached. Nothing's coming to me. Patriarch Zhou took the piece of paper and looked at it for a moment before promptly shaking his head. Wife, what about you? Patriarch Zhou handed the number to his wife. This is a phone number from the independent state indeed, but I don't recognize the region, she said. Let me see. Zhou Wu stood up and took the piece of paper to examine it. It might be Yun City, but I'm not sure, Zhou Wu said with uncertainty. Yun City. Yi Wanwan was dumbfounded. She didn't even know the name of the district she was currently in. After talking to Zhou Wu and his family, Yi Wanwan learned about the basic geography of the independent state. Originally, the independent state was divided into 6 major districts. The 4 great clans each controlled 1 district while the martial arts union controlled 2 districts. However, about 30 years ago, a civil war erupted in the independent state, and the 6 districts were combined into 1 big district due to developmental needs, and it was named Yun City. Its prosperity was akin to China's imperial city, and was the independent state's most important major city. Currently, Yi Wanwan was in the suburbs of Yun City. Although Yun City was only a city, it was created from the original 6 major districts, so it was incomparably bigger and broader than China's imperial city. The headquarters of the 4 great clans, the martial arts union, the 3 major mercenary academies, and some extremely renowned mercenary guilds were all located in Yun City. For example, the Zhou family might have some prestige locally, but their prestige would be like a grain of sand dropped into the ocean if they visited Yun City. It would be harder than ascending to the heavens for any martial arts patrician family to gain a steady footing in Yun City. Chapter 1278. After hearing an explanation from Zhou Wu and his dad, Yi Wanwan finally understood the concept of the independent state's Yun City. 4 great clans, Yi Wanwan murmured. The 4 great clans of the independent state are all tyrannical-level patrician families. The patriarch of the Nia family manages mercenaries, the Ji family focuses on underground syndicates, the Shun family might not be talented in martial arts, but they're the wealthiest family in the independent state. Their wealth can rival a country's. As for the Ling family, they're a bit average and aren't especially outstanding, Zhou Wu said with a chuckle. Oh right. Then does the Nia family have someone called Nameless Nia? Yi Wanwan probed as she looked at Zhou Wu. Nameless Nia. Zhou Wu shook his head. Our Zhou family rarely visits Yun City, and it's difficult for the outside world to learn about the members of the 4 great clans. Moreover, the Nia family simply has too many members. From the direct line to outside relatives and side branches, heaven knows how many people are in the Nia family. We don't even know the name of the patriarch of the Nia family. The Zhou family was only considered a minor martial arts patrician family in the independent state. A family on the Nia family's level was like a colossus to the Zhou family, distant and forever out of their grasp. Aya! As they were speaking, an adorable little boy in his pajamas sprinted into the living room and latched onto Zhou Wu's calf. Your son? Yi Wanwan asked with a light chuckle, looking at Zhou Wu. Zhou Wu shook his head vehemently. He's not my son. His parents are tourists who came to the independent state 3 years ago and died here. I adopted him without much thought back then. Yi Wanwan was briefly startled by Zhou Wu's explanation. It had to be said that Zhou Wu's character was quite decent. It wasn't only Zhou Wu, the entire Zhou family was very friendly. What's your name? Yi Wanwan asked the child with a smile. The little boy had his eyes wide open, and he kept staring at Yi Wanwan before suddenly opening his arms toward Yi Wanwan, as though he was asking to be picked up. Yi Wanwan couldn't help but think of Tang Tang when she saw this child, and a feeling of familiarity surfaced in her heart. Yi Wanwan took the little boy into her arms immediately. Miss Yi, his name is Qiu. He was probably traumatized when his parents died tragically in the independent state, so he lost the ability to speak. Yi Wanwan looked at the little boy and fell into deep contemplation. He was young, but he watched his parents die tragically in front of him, so he definitely suffered great trauma. She couldn't imagine this child's state of mind back then. Yi Wanwan gently touched the little guy's head, and Qiu hugged Yi Wanwan, unwilling to let go no matter what. Miss Yi, it looks like Qiu really likes you. This child is actually really afraid of strangers, Zhou Wu said with a smile. Yi Wanwan smiled when she heard that. She seemed to have a rather great affinity with children. After chatting so long with the Zhou family, Yi Wanwan felt a bit tired. Madame Zhou personally cleaned up a guest room for Yi Wanwan, and had her go inside to rest. However, Qiu insisted on following Yi Wanwan, so she helplessly took Qiu with her. Late at night, Yi Wanwan sunk into a deep sleep with the child in her arms and spent her first actual night in the independent state. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and Yi Wanwan had stayed at the Zhou residence for 4 days already. In those 4 days, Yi Wanwan asked Zhou Wu or Madame Zhou about the independent state's culture and customs whenever she could. She couldn't live in the Zhou residence forever, and had to leave eventually. The more she knew about the independent state, the more beneficial it would be for her. Chapter 1279. 1279. Aside from asking questions about the independent state, Yi Wanwan spent her days with Qiu. They ate together and slept together. Yi Wanwan really liked this little boy with a tragic background, so their relationship was quite good. Yi Wanwan became familiar with the dozens of Zhou family members in the last few days, and learned more about rumors and news about the independent state from them. She also became responsible for some trivial matters of the Zhou family. Normally, she went out to buy some groceries and also took the fierce dog raised by the Zhou family out on walks, along with other tasks. She couldn't keep freeloading off the Zhou family. Of course, Yi Wanwan had to ask Madame Zhou for money for groceries. Yi Wanwan originally thought the independent state was a fairly behind and sealed-off world that merely had a high martial arts culture, but after spending a few days in the independent state, she realized she was gravely mistaken. The independent state was only lagging in entertainment. For example, the acting scene wasn't that popular in the independent state, and the concept of idols didn't exist there. In the independent state, the most revered and respected people were martial arts experts. The stronger they were, the more respected they were. If they weren't strong, they were nothing. In China, Yi Wanwan thought her martial arts skills were extraordinary already, but her skills were utterly lacking in the independent state. A random pedestrian pulled off the street was probably stronger than her. If she was unlucky, she would be fiercely beaten without a chance of fighting back. The next morning at daybreak, Yi Wanwan left the Zhou family with Qiu in her arms to purchase some vegetables and groceries. Madame Zhou trusted her a lot, and didn't think she would run off with the grocery money. The independent state's currency was the world's universal currency, just like China, and wasn't some obsolete currency from an undeveloped country that she originally thought it was. In the past few days, the activity of the official personnel of the Martial Arts Union decreased, so even if Yi Wanwan was caught without a permit, the Zhou family could act on her behalf. Aya! Qiu saw beads of sweat on Yi Wanwan's forehead and raised his hand to wipe them off. Qiu is so good. Yi Wanwan complimented Qiu. Qiu blushed and gave Yi Wanwan an abashed smile. Before Yi Wanwan could continue, waves of discussion were heard in front of them, and all the pedestrians on the street rushed out and ran toward the same direction. Yi Wanwan was very curious about this rush of people. The Li family is bloody unlucky. Right. The Fearless Alliance is here, and the Li family is one of the last 2 patrician families they're going to eradicate today. Who's after the Li family? I don't know. Yi Wanwan's expression shifted when she heard the conversation of the passers-by. She followed the rush of people with Qiuqiu. 15 minutes later, Yi Wanwan stopped in front of an estate, her left arm holding Qiuqiu and her right arm holding the fresh vegetables and meat. There were a dozen or so men in black with extremely cold expressions standing in front of them, and the giant characters "Fearless" were printed on all their backs. The leader seemed to be a very thin boy who looked about 15 or 16. He was young but was already the leader of this group of men. Fuck. 7-star. That boy is 7-star. A certain pedestrian's expression drastically changed when they saw the thin youth. Chapter 1280 Fearless Alliance. The SS-level mercenary under Bro Flat Top. 7-star. Gasps rang out everywhere. This taciturn youth who looked like he could be toppled over by a breeze was one of the strongest fighters of the Fearless Alliance. Is this the Li family? A while later, the youth lightly coughed and looked at the elderly man next to him. That's right. The elderly man in black slowly said. Today's mission is to eradicate the last 2 patrician families that were given a 7-kill order by the Fearless Alliance. This Li family is one of them. Dozens of people rushed out of the Li family's estate just as he finished speaking. They were led by the patriarch of the Li family. Veins popped out of his forehead as he angrily shouted. Isn't the Fearless Alliance bullying people too much? My Li family doesn't have any grievances or conflicts with the Fearless Alliance. So why did you issue a 7-kill order to us and want to eradicate my entire family? Don't have any grievances or conflicts, the youth 7-star murmured. An inexplicably cold glint flashed through his placid eyes before disappearing without a trace. The Li family badmouthed my Fearless Alliance, so they should be eradicated, 7-star slowly said, his voice gentle and seemingly harmless. Your Fearless Alliance does all sorts of evil things. Which actions of yours aren't atrocious and outrageous? The Li patriarch exclaimed angrily. 7-star, their Li family still doesn't know death is on their doorstep. How comical. The elderly man haughtily assessed the Li patriarch with a sneer. Kill, 7-star ordered coldly. Fearless. 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 As 7-star's words fell, the members of the Fearless Alliance rushed toward the members of the Li family like mad and enraged lions. In the next second, Yi Wanwan watched in disbelief as fresh blood dyed the earth beneath the Li family's feet bright red. There were only a dozen or so Fearless Alliance members, but they were fearless against the dozens of martial artists from the Li family. Over half of the Li family was dead or injured in the blink of an eye. Youth, you're young, but you're so malicious. You deserve to die. Suddenly, the patriarch of the Li family leaped into the air and looked like he teleported to 7-star. His fist swinging toward 7-star's temples. However, 7-star somehow disappeared from his spot without a trace. So fast. Yi Wanwan's heart wildly pounded as she watched this. 7-star's speed was extremely fast, so much so that she could barely catch him with her naked eyes. Are you looking for me? 7-star's voice rang out. Before the Li patriarch could react, he felt like a mountain was pressing down on top of his head. Boom. Everyone watched 7-star's feet stomp on Patriarch Li's head. The youth stood with his arms behind his back, graceful and free. His expression was cold like ice, and his placid eyes didn't contain any human emotion. Get lost! The Li patriarch's figure trembled, and he wanted to throw the youth off his head, but 7-star was like a statue and remained unmoving no matter what the Li patriarch attempted. You bastards! The Li patriarch erupted in rage. However, 7-star lifted a leg as the Li patriarch spoke and lightly tapped his temple with the tip of his feet. A second later, the Li patriarch's face turned pale, and he couldn't utter another word. He fell on the ground with a plop, killed from a tap from 7-star. The Li family erupted into chaos when they witnessed their patriarch killed in an instant. Don't spare a single person, 7-star landed on the ground and calmly commanded. Chapter 1281 Far Away. Yi Wanwan tightly hugged Qiuqiu and covered his eyes. Yi Wanwan finally understood how frightening the independent state was now. A public slaughter. This kind of matter absolutely wouldn't happen in China. Ripples of begging and wailing rose one after the other. However, the Li family was met with nothing but an icy and merciless slaughter. Yi Wanwan also ran into people from the Fearless Alliance in China before, but she never expected the Fearless Alliance in the independent state would be so terrifying and vicious. Corpses littered the ground outside the Li estate, overwhelming spectators with shock and horror. This was Yi Wanwan's first time witnessing a scene that resembled a hell created from malevolent asuras, so it was unavoidable for her to feel unsettled. A moment later, Yi Wanwan turned around and left with Qiuqiu, unable to watch any longer. Although the Martial Arts Union was known as the official faction of the independent state, and was recognized by the 4 great clans, the Martial Arts Union didn't manage this kind of personal conflict between factions. Yi Wanwan soon returned to the Zhou residence. Wanwan, why do you look so unwell? Madame Zhou noticed something amiss with Yi Wanwan's expression, and immediately poured a cup of water before walking to her side with heartache. On my way back just now, I saw the Fearless Alliance. Yi Wanwan took the cup from Madame Zhou and drank it all in one gulp. Madame Zhou and Patriarch Zhou's expressions both shifted when they heard this. The Fearless Alliance was truly frightening. I personally witnessed a martial arts patrician family being massacred by the Fearless Alliance. Yi Wanwan had a deep frown on her face. This kind of thing is common in the independent state, so the independent state really isn't a good place for you outsiders, Patriarch Zhou said with a sigh. Before Yi Wanwan could reply, Zhou Wu swiftly walked into the living room with his face ashen and a pitch-black card gripped tightly in his hand. Dad. Mom. I just found this in Qiuqiu's room. Zhou Wu displayed the black card. What? Patriarch Zhou's face was deathly pale when he saw the black card in Zhou Wu's hand. Fearless Alliance. 7 kill order. How could this be possible? Madame Zhou almost fainted on the spot. So far, not a single martial arts patrician family that received a 7-kill order from the Fearless Alliance managed to survive. There's some dust on this 7-kill order, so some time has passed already. Zhou Wu clenched his teeth. What probably happened was that Qiuqiu accidentally picked up this 7-kill order when the Fearless Alliance tossed it into the Zhou residence, and he didn't know what it was, so he carelessly tossed it in his room. Hence, they had no idea their family was issued the 7-kill order by the Fearless Alliance. Miss Yi, leave quickly. Madame Zhou hastily stood up all of a sudden, and pushed Yi Wanwan out of the Zhou residence. Yi Wanwan was astonished. She somewhat understood the meaning behind the 7-kill order by now. The Li family from earlier was eradicated precisely because they received a 7-kill order from the Fearless Alliance. Leave quickly. Don't stay at the Zhou residence. Patriarch Zhou also hurriedly said. If Yi Wanwan was still at the Zhou residence by the time the Fearless Alliance arrived, the consequences would be too horrible to contemplate. The Fearless Alliance absolutely wouldn't care whether you were a member of the Zhou family or not. Take Qiuqiu and leave. Soon, Zhou Wu picked Qiuqiu up and handed him to Yi Wanwan. The Fearless Alliance had always been vicious and didn't care whether you were a man or woman, old or young. I'll go call the police. Yi Wanwan lost her composure. She instantly found her words comical as soon as she said them. This wasn't China. This was the independent state. Before Yi Wanwan could say anything more, Madame Zhou had already shoved her out of the residence. At the same time, the dozen Fearless Alliance members Yi Wanwan saw earlier were heading toward the Zhou family in a grandiose fashion. The leader, 7-star, accidentally caught sight of Yi Wanwan, and was briefly startled. Confusion flickered through his icy eyes as he assessed her. Chapter 1282. 1282, you're from the Zhou family? A certain member from the Fearless Alliance shouted coldly. Yi Wanwan immediately shook her head. If she admitted that, she'd probably be killed on the spot. She's not a member of the Zhou family. Suddenly, the main door opened and the 80 or so people from the Zhou family rushed out. Patriarch Zhou shouted, "Don't hurt the innocent." Our Fearless Alliance naturally wouldn't harm the innocent. The elderly man next to 7-star said with a sneer. Fervent discussion bubbled around them as more and more pedestrians gathered in front of the Zhou residence. Not a single family who received a 7-kill order had survived, so to the onlookers, The Zhou family would die without a doubt. After today, the Zhou family would exist no more. I want to ask, how did our Zhou family offend your fearless alliance? Patriarch Zhou was very confused. They'd never had any interactions with the fearless alliance, so why were they issued a 7-kill order for no reason? There wasn't much. It's just that the location of your Zhou residence is decent and the feng shui is good, so the fearless alliance wanted to establish a branch here. The elderly man next to 7-star responded with a smile in a matter-of-fact manner. What did you say? Patriarch Zhou was livid from anger. You want to eradicate my Zhou family just because of this. If you like it, our Zhou family can give it to you without a cent of compensation. Hey, you want to give it to our fearless alliance as charity? The elderly man looked disdainful. Their fearless alliance had always been like this. They would snatch whatever they liked. As for people, they would kill them if they wanted to. It all depended on their mood. Reason and logic weren't important to them. It wouldn't be charity. I hope you won't twist my meaning. This is an exchange. I'll use the fortuitous land that you value to trade for my family's lives. Patriarch Zhou patiently explained to the elderly man. Patriarch Zhou feared the fearless alliance from the bottom of his heart. They were a faction that basked in murder and slaughter. Being targeted by the fearless alliance represented misfortune and disaster. Enough nonsense. Since you received a 7-kill order from the fearless alliance, the fate of your Zhou family was decided the day you received the order. The elderly man snorted and flicked his sleeves. Kill. The dozen fearless alliance members with fearless written on their backs all charged toward the Zhou family instantly. Father, don't waste your words. It's useless. We'll stake everything we have today. Zhou Wu acted, and was the first to meet the fearless alliance's attack, without any intention of retreating. However, although Zhou Wu was quite skilled in martial arts, he was still inferior to the members of the fearless alliance. A few breaths later, Zhou Wu was sent flying back like a snipped kite. Shouts and curses endlessly rang out. Although the Zhou family had a lot of members, they were defeated like a landslide when faced with the elite experts of the fearless alliance. They didn't fear death, but bravado was useless in the face of such a difference in strength. The elderly man suddenly moved and gripped Patriarch Zhou's neck with a lift of his arm. Patriarch Zhou's feet left the ground, and his face flushed as breathing became increasingly difficult. The audience grew bigger outside the Zhou residence, and quiet discussion and gestures were heard from them occasionally, but no one dared to walk forward and speak against the fearless alliance. Yi Wanwan had a deep frown on her face. Although she wanted to help the Zhou family, she didn't know how to help and also knew her own lack of ability. Chapter 1283. 1283. Yi Wanwan gained a basic understanding of the fearless alliance by now. Based on their modus operandi in the independent state, if she dared to walk even a single inch forward or vocally stop them, she would be killed. Qiuqiu's face flushed as he watched this scene in Yi Wanwan's arms. He struggled out of her arms with inexplicable strength and dashed forward. Qiuqiu. Yi Wanwan's expression shifted, and she wanted to stop him, but it was too late. Aya. Qiuqiu ran to the elderly man and fiercely slammed his head against the elderly man's leg. Where did this little bastard come from? The elderly man became furious instantly and lifted his right arm, throwing Patriarch Zhou into the air and grabbing Qiuqiu. The child is innocent. Stop. Stop. Madame Zhou turned pale with fright. Humph, a brat who's still wet behind the ears. I wager you're a short-lived brat who won't live past today. The elderly man lifted Qiuqiu up and attempted to slam him to the ground. In a fraction of a second, Yi Wanwan reflexively leaped forward without a second thought and blocked the elderly man. Stop. The elderly man frowned slightly and looked at Yi Wanwan with an indescribable expression. You also want to die? The elderly man's face was dark. How interesting. Even a girl dared to offend their fearless alliance now. I told you to stop. Are you fucking deaf? They don't even spare children. Absolutely insane and heartless. Before the elderly man from the fearless alliance could say anything, Yi Wanwan abruptly pulled out the gun tucked in her clothes. The icy, pitch-black muzzle pushed against the elderly man's head. A gun. You. The bone-chilling cold caused the elderly man's face to shift slightly. Someone actually dared to carry a gun in the independent state and take it out in public. Even their fearless alliance didn't have the guts. This was the oldest rule in the independent state. Whether it was the four great clans, the recluse ancient clans, or the martial arts union who claimed to be the official faction of the independent state, they all didn't have the guts. However, this woman really did take out a gun and point it at his head. This cold feeling proved it absolutely wasn't fake. A commotion rolled through the crowd, and nearly all the onlookers looked at Yi Wanwan with a strange expression. Some even carried an intense hatred. In the independent state, every resident was responsible for killing anyone discovered carrying a gun, let alone using a gun. Patriarch Zhou and the others all looked at Yi Wanwan in surprise. They didn't expect Yi Wanwan to have a gun on her person. Madame Zhou wanted to say something to Yi Wanwan, but didn't end up saying anything. Yi Wanwan's fate was determined the moment she took out a gun. It was probably going to be very tragic. Haha. Miss, you should know the rules of the independent state. You aren't permitted to carry a gun in the independent state. You should know the consequences of doing so, right? Even if you don't think for yourself, you should think about your parents and your children. The elderly man patiently persuaded Yi Wanwan with a light chuckle, but he didn't dare slam Qiuqiu to the ground. I don't freaking have children. Yi Wanwan snorted. Put the child down slowly. Chapter 1284. Okay, calm down. I'm putting the child down. The elderly man looked like he feared being killed by a slight misclick. Soon, the elderly man placed Qiuqiu on the ground lightly. Madame Zhou immediately went up and took Qiuqiu into her arms. Haha, miss. Why were you so suicidal and insisted on carrying a gun? Look, I did as you said. Can we peacefully talk now? The elderly man said with a light chuckle while raising his hands. The members of the Fearless Alliance also stopped what they were doing. This was the first time that someone dared to pull out a gun in public in the independent state. What? Aren't you fearless? Don't you fear nothing? Are you afraid now? Yi Wanwan's face was extremely cold as she pressed her gun against the elderly man's head. The coldness and killing intent in the girl's eyes caused the elderly man to be startled for some reason. Miss, the rule of our independent state. Don't freaking talk to me about the rules of the independent state. Those are your rules, not my rules. Yi Wanwan coldly said. Suspicion flickered through Seven Star's icy eyes again when he heard her words. This girl. Okay. It's really been a long time since I've encountered such an interesting child. The elderly man was briefly taken back before he broke into loud laughter. Yi Wanwan frowned and watched the elderly man vigilantly. Immediately leave the Zhou residence with your people. The elderly man's face chilled gradually as he enunciated each word clearly. Miss, my patience also has a limit. Worst comes to worst, I'll trade my life for yours. I'm a member of the Fearless Alliance. I'm not afraid of death. You should know our Fearless Alliance's modus operandi. Every member of the Fearless Alliance was renowned for being unafraid of death. Yi Wanwan had heard about this in her casual chat with the Zhou family. However, Yi Wanwan didn't believe people could really be unafraid of death. He had a gun pointed to his head, but he was still unafraid? You better be that brave. I'll count down from 3. If you don't do as I say, I'll fire. Yi Wanwan told the elderly man expressionlessly. If this was a few days ago, Yi Wanwan wouldn't have been able to imagine herself pointing a gun at the head of a member of the Fearless Alliance and threatening him. I must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's gall to get this courage. However, the situation had progressed to this point, so she had to persist even if she was terrified to death. She knew she would be devoured without a bone left if she showed the slightest bit of weakness in front of these people. From the moment she chose to enter the independent state, she knew what it meant to be here. She was on her own for everything, and no one could help her. Yi Wanwan took a deep breath and counted down coldly. 3, 2, 1. When Yi Wanwan counted to 1, she clicked the trigger without any hesitation. However, to her surprise, the elderly man really wasn't afraid of death. His back stayed straight, and he calmly faced death. Bang! Bang bang! Yi Wanwan pressed the trigger several times, But there was only the sound from the trigger without a single spark from the muzzle. The entire surroundings grew silent. It was so silent that even the beating of everyone's hearts could be heard. Chapter 1285. 1285. There were two things at hand that exceeded Yi Wanwan's expectations. First, the elderly man really wasn't afraid of death and never relented. Second, her gun seemed to be broken. According to Yi Wanwan's plan, the elderly man would definitely pee in his pants and fall to his knees when she counted to 1, and she would fire at empty air. Then she would take control of the situation and frighten the Fearless Alliance. However, while her imagination was perfect, the reality was a bit cruel. Excuse me. Hold on. Yi Wanwan quickly opened the ammunition clip and discovered there weren't any bullets in the clip. It was only now that Yi Wanwan remembered that she bought a gun for self-defense but didn't equip the bullets, so afterward, it seemed she lost the bullets in the sea. The Fearless Alliance and spectators all looked at Yi Wanwan, and the atmosphere grew a little embarrassing. Yi Wanwan donned a serious expression when she saw how the elderly man's face was so dark that it nearly dripped ink. "Old man, look, you're already so old and your limbs are strained. So why are you running around and crying for murder every day instead of enjoying a retired life at home? It's not right. I merely used this toy gun to help you liven the atmosphere and pull a small prank on you. Old man, you're so old and have a leg in your grave already. You shouldn't be so serious with a young person like me, right?" Yi Wanwan continued. "The Zhou family, Fearless Alliance, 7-star, the spectators. Forget it. In consideration of your young age and immaturity, I won't make you pay today. Leave." The elderly man sighed and shook his head. Yi Wanwan's eyes brightened. "Old thing. No, old man, are you for real? You'll let me leave?" "Hey young girl, I'm also joking with you." The elderly man had an icy smile. "Old man, you're a bit mischievous." Yi Wanwan's eyes examined every inch of her surroundings, preparing to flee for her life at any moment. "Die!" The elderly man angrily shouted and swung a fist at Yi Wanwan with everything he had. So fast. Yi Wanwan's expression drastically changed when she felt the strength and speed behind this elderly man's fist. Yi Wanwan instinctively felt an extreme sense of danger, and couldn't react or counterattack this punch at all. At that moment, her mind turned blank and her body instinctively leaned to the left. Her figure looked nimble and fleeting, like a colorful butterfly fluttering into a dance, her path sly and elusive. In the next second, Yi Wanwan raised a finger instinctively again, and mercilessly pressed it against the elderly man's head. A loud boom was heard, and the elderly man's figure flew into the air, as though a train at full speed slammed into him. The people from the Fearless Alliance watched in disbelief as the elderly man's figure slammed into the Zhou residence's iron door, and even made a big dent in it. At this, the spectators were all aghast. Is this woman a freak? Yi Wanwan herself was dumbfounded. What did I just do? An older member of the Fearless Alliance looked at Yi Wanwan incredulously. How could this be possible? It's the president's unique body technique and finger method. 7-star was also astonished. The body composition of the president of their Fearless Alliance was a bit unusual. She was strictly trained since she was young, so Bro Flattop's martial arts moves and killing techniques were all tailored to her. There wasn't a second person in this world who could learn it. Even if they tried to learn it, they couldn't use the techniques with the same power as their president. 7-star kept finding this woman especially familiar earlier for some reason. Could it be? Chapter 1286. How is this possible? All the members of the Fearless Alliance looked at each other, bewildered, with shock and terror on their face. They were members of the Fearless Alliance and were fairly senior members, so they were somewhat familiar with the president's martial art techniques. Back then, the president said she was going home to visit her parents but fell out of contact and never showed her face again. The Fearless Alliance expended a great amount of manpower and time to search for their president, but unfortunately, no progress was made over the years. 7-star stared at the girl intently, bewilderedness and uncertainty brimming on his face. You are, Sir President. A member of the Fearless Alliance stared at Yi Wanwan, shock and amazement all over his face. The expression of the elderly man sent into the air with a finger from Yi Wanwan drastically changed as a trail of blood dripped from his mouth. Based on the strength and angle from the finger method used just now, this girl was very similar to their president. Yu. Back then, he frequently acted as the president's training partner. So when this girl attacked him, he felt like he traveled back to the distant past when he was the president's training partner many years ago. This feeling of being beaten was too familiar. President. The elderly man called out in disbelief as he shakily walked toward Yi Wanwan. President, is it you? The man absent-mindedly looked at Yi Wanwan with mixed feelings in his eyes. Yi Wanwan attacked completely out of her instincts at that moment of imminent danger just now. When she wanted to continue, her mind turned blank again. In her anxiousness, she saw the people from the Fearless Alliance staring at her and calling her president. She was instantly dumbfounded. She naturally knew that the president of the Fearless Alliance was that legendary, extremely vicious and wicked bro Flattop who went missing for many years. What did these people and that evil-looking elderly man mean by calling her president? A thought came to Yi Wanwan's mind. When she ran into those people who were expelled from the Fearless Alliance in China, they also thought she was the president of the Fearless Alliance. Could there really be similarities between her and the president of the Fearless Alliance? Otherwise, people wouldn't keep mistaking her for the Fearless Alliance's president. Countless thoughts flashed through Yi Wanwan's mind in this short moment, and she swallowed back all her questions. If she denied she was the president of the Fearless Alliance, she and everyone from the Zhou family would die for sure. Since they thought she was the president of the Fearless Alliance, why wouldn't she go along with it? Then she'd not only save the Zhou family, but she'd also survive. Yi Wanwan's expression shifted when she thought up to this point. Although she had no idea how the president of the Fearless Alliance acted, she could make some guesses at Bro Flattop's personality based on the rumors. She was going to die anyway, so why not take a risk? It was time for her to exhibit her true skills. After Yi Wanwan heard the elderly man calling her president, she put on a careless expression and distastefully glanced at the elderly man. What the heck are you calling for? The elderly man seemed to grow more certain after seeing the girl's distasteful expression, and walked toward Yi Wanwan staggeringly. This subordinate was useless, and couldn't even block a single attack from you. Please forgive me, President. It's not that I disobeyed the President's instructions and concentrated on practicing my martial arts. It's just that I'm truly too old. Chapter 1287. The elderly man explained with trepidation as he bent down and carefully peered at the girl. He continued to admit his wrongs. President, this subordinate was blind and failed to recognize your venerable identity. An astute glint flashed through the elderly man's eyes and he asked, however, why didn't you state your identity just now, President? As expected, they weren't so easy to deceive. He was testing her. Yi Wanwan guessed Bro Flattop's mindset. Since she didn't return after having fun for so long on the outside, she either had an accident or hadn't had enough fun, and didn't want to return. And so, Yi Wanwan clicked her tongue. State what identity? You can carelessly eat things, but you can't carelessly say things. Who said I was your president? If Yi Wanwan directly claimed to be their president, they might not believe it, but if Yi Wanwan suddenly did the opposite and denied it, they would be surprised. The elderly man was dumbfounded as expected and turned grievous, as though he was about to cry. President, stop playing. Who else but you could use that move just now? This subordinate absolutely wouldn't mistake the feeling of being beaten by the president. Since you've returned this time, I beg you to stop running off again, President. Because you left for too long, your appearance must have changed greatly over the years, so this subordinate couldn't recognize you at first. Please pardon this subordinate, President. Yi Wanwan finally revealed an exasperated expression at losing her disguise. How troublesome. The elderly man hastily flattered her with a bootlicking expression. You're probably the only one who'd dare to pull out a gun in the independent state, President. How could I have missed that? The elderly man was a bit upset at himself as he said that. If he discovered these details and recognized the president earlier, He wouldn't have had to suffer a beating. You, 7-star foolishly looked at her. Yi Wanwan had just relaxed when she noticed 7-star, and all her hair stood on end immediately. This youth wasn't someone to be trifled with, and was harder to handle than this elderly man. Yi Wanwan tried to steady her mind. Her lips curled, and she calmly looked at the youth. You are really sister? 7-star walked forward, an unnoticeable glint surfacing in his eyes. Sister. Yi Wanwan was surprised. What? 7-star of the Fearless Alliance was the president's younger brother? Biological brother or sworn brother? Regardless which kind, should she change something about her speech and tone toward a brother? Based on the Fearless Alliance's style, its president, Bro Flattop, had to be someone vicious and evil. What kind of attitude did this type of person hold toward her brother? The feelings were a bit hard to guess. 7-star. What you don't recognize, sister? Yi Wanwan changed her speech after some contemplation, and added some gentleness and longing, but didn't remove her imposing quality. It should be this kind of feeling, right? Yi Wanwan's heart raced to her throat. A single misspoken word could lead to her death. 7-star stared at her, and looked down wordlessly with a complicated expression. The other members of the Fearless Alliance also bustled with discussion. She must be our president, Bro Flattop. Otherwise, how could she know Bro Flattop's unique martial art methods? Back then, 7th Master begged the president to teach him a few moves, but 7th Master couldn't learn it after half a year even with his talent. A certain member said excitedly. Chapter 1288. 1288. Yi Wanwan inwardly gave this member a giant thumbs up. This lad had a bright future. However, the president has been missing for a long time. They all say a young woman is very different from the little girl she once was, so I really couldn't recognize her. There seems to be something different about her aura. Another member interjected with confusion. Yi Wanwan immediately cursed this member and his ancestors in her mind. A lad like him didn't have any future. At this time, the elderly man sucked up to her again. Anyway, it's good that you're back, President. Welcome back, President. 7-star was non-committal when he heard that. He clearly didn't look like he completely believed in her yet. His cold gaze made Yi Wanwan feel like a blade was pointed at her back. The other members promptly echoed the elderly man's words. Welcome back, President. Welcome back, President. Their bright voices resonated throughout the entire street. The Zhou family and the nearby audience were all dumbstruck in their places. Although the president of the Fearless Alliance was incomparably mysterious and no one had seen her true appearance, her reputation was thunderous. In the independent state, from an elderly person with their foot in the grave to a child who just learned to speak, who didn't know Bro Flattop's name. Bro Flattop was missing for so many years, but she's returned today. How could there be a mistake? Even the members of the Fearless Alliance admitted it. She must be Bro Flattop. My heavens! Bro Flattop, is this good-looking? I've always thought Bro Flattop was some fat and ugly person. Heh! What use are her looks? It's just a cover. Underneath the cover is a vicious heart. Do you want to die? Be quiet. You mustn't be heard. Otherwise, just wait for your head to be chopped off by the Fearless Alliance. The Zhou family all looked at each other, flabbergasted. They could see the disbelief in each other's eyes. Patriarch Zhou, Madame Zhou, and Zhou Wu were utterly taken back. They never would have expected the woman they had an amicable relationship with these past few days turned out to be the legendary ruthless and vicious president of the Fearless Alliance. Didn't she say she wasn't from the independent state, and came to the independent state to find a friend? Zhou Wu looked at Yi Wanwan incredulously with turbulent emotions. Zhou Wu never would have expected the woman he rescued from the Martial Arts Union's investigation team to be the president of the Fearless Alliance. Patriarch Zhou said darkly, Sir President is sly and never acted logically. How could we read her mind? Sister. 7-star examined Yi Wanwan closely, confusion glittering in his eyes. Was this woman really Sister by Feng Wan? Although she used the same martial art moves, he felt like something was off. Even her appearance was only a tiny tinge similar. Whether she was real or fake, They had to bring this person back. It'd be best if she was the real one. If she was fake. Since sister's back, let's head back and inform everyone, 7-Star said, regaining his aloofness a moment later. Yi Wanwan's heart sunk when she heard that. 7-Star didn't believe her at all. Right. The president's return is a gargantuan joyous affair. We must hurry and inform everyone. President, let's head back. Let's head back first. The elderly man was incredibly excited. Chapter 1289. 1289. Then the elderly man quickly asked, President, how should we handle the Zhou family? The Fearless Alliance previously planned to eradicate the Zhou family and establish a Fearless Alliance branch in this spot. However, the elderly man wasn't dumb. Their president suddenly appeared at this time and seemed to be backing up the Zhou family, so perhaps the president had some connection to the Zhou family. Handle. Yi Wanwan snorted. What do you think? The elderly man jolted in fright and hastily turned to the Zhou family. He cupped his fists and said, Everyone, we're on the same side. It's all been accidental friendly fire today. I hope you all won't mind. It's all a misunderstanding. Say, if you mentioned you were friends with the president earlier, this wouldn't have happened at all. Patriarch Zhou and his family couldn't say anything in their defense. How could they have known Yi Wanwan was the president of the Fearless Alliance? Sister, come back with us, 7-Star said as his eyes landed on Yi Wanwan. The Zhou family's fate, whether they were eradicated or spared, wasn't important. What was most pressing was to determine whether this girl was the president of the Fearless Alliance. Yi Wanwan was a bit nervous on the inside, but had to maintain her calm and aloof facade. If she really followed 7-Star and his group back to the Fearless Alliance, wouldn't it be equivalent to a sheep entering a tiger's den? Based on the Fearless Alliance's style, if they realized she was pretending to be Bro Flat Top, the consequences would be too horrible to imagine. Yi Wanwan didn't have any time to think about why these people thought she was the Fearless Alliance's president. She just wanted to extricate herself from this situation and escape. 7-Star, I still have some matters to take care of. I'll naturally head back when I'm done. Yi Wanwan refuted. However, 7-Star didn't intend on releasing Yi Wanwan. He assessed Yi Wanwan for a few seconds before saying, Sister, regardless of the importance of your business, you'll have to take care of it later. Right now, the Fearless Alliance has something more important that requires your attention. Then 7-Star didn't give Yi Wanwan any chance to object and turned around to leave. President, let's go. The whole gang has been waiting for President to return all these years. Currently, the Fearless Alliance's internal situation isn't stable. It's been divided into two factions. If President doesn't come back, the Fearless Alliance might end up breaking apart in the end. The elderly man sighed. This elderly man was helpless, but Yi Wanwan was more helpless than him. What did the Fearless Alliance breaking apart have to do with her? However, she couldn't back down anymore. 7-Star doubted her identity from the start, so if she insisted on not returning with them, 7-Star would catch her guilt for sure, and it'd be problematic. In the end, Yi Wanwan had no choice but to compromise and leave with the Fearless Alliance. Patriarch Zhou, Madame Zhou, thank you for generously taking care of me these past days. Yi Wanwan quietly thanked them before leaving. Yi Wanwan was grateful toward the Zhou family from the bottom of her heart. After coming to the independent state, if it weren't for the Zhou family, she probably would have been caught by the investigation team and lost her life. Soon, Yi Wanwan entered the car and sat in the back seat with 7-Star. 7-Star maintained a cold expression and stayed silent the entire journey. An ominous feeling rose in her heart as she watched 7-Star's demeanor. 7-Star didn't think she was the Fearless Alliance's president at all. Otherwise, his attitude wouldn't be like this. She was truly a sheep entering a tiger's den with her fate unknown. Chapter 1290. What was tricky was that Yi Wanwan had no knowledge about the relationship between 7-Star and Bro Flat Top. Were they biological siblings, maternal cousins, fraternal cousins, or something else? Yi Wanwan lacked knowledge about both the Fearless Alliance and Bro Flat Top. She'd definitely let the cat out of the bag eventually. Yi Wanwan wrangled her mind for a way to escape from this situation. But 7-Star didn't give her any chance. The car kept moving forward and never stopped. After about half a day, the scenery turned more bustling. There was an endless stream of cars, and people everywhere the eye could see. Based on the prosperous big city scene and the Zhou family's description, Yi Wanwan wagered that this should be the most important city in the independent state. Yun City, the headquarters of the 4 great clans, the Nye, Ji, Shun and Ling families, were all located in Yun City, as well as the Martial Arts Union and the Mercenary Academy. The prosperity here wasn't inferior to China's imperial city in any aspect. Moreover, Yun City's territory was more vast, so it was much bigger than Imperial City. How many years has it been since I've been to Yun City? Yi Wanwan said, putting on an act. However, 7-Star didn't say anything, and his eyes remained shut. Box Nouvelle Coam. Yi Wanwan couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Why was this child so troublesome? A moment later, the fleet of cars stopped in front of a tall building, the Fearless Alliance's headquarters. The driver opened the car door, and 7-Star got out of the car. Sister, we're here, 7-Star aloofly said when he saw Yi Wanwan dawdling in the car. All right. Yi Wanwan had no choice but to follow 7-Star out of the car. President, everyone will definitely die from excitement when they see you. The elderly man joked with Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan didn't know whether the members of the Fearless Alliance would die from excitement, but she herself quite wanted to die right now. She could have pretended to be anyone, so why did she just have to pretend to be the boss of a ruthless and savage gang like the Fearless Alliance? Carefully thinking back on the previous situation at the Zhou residence, if she didn't go with the flow back then and admitted she was Bro Flat Top, not only would the Zhou family have been done for, but she also wouldn't have ended up well. This was a solution amongst dead ends. She had no choice. Let's go. Yi Wanwan squeezed a smile onto her face and followed 7-Star and the elderly man into the building. It had to be said that the Fearless Alliance was truly wealthy and loaded. They managed to build a building several dozen stories high in a place like Yun City as their headquarters. If she was really Bro Flat Top, that'd be rather nice. However, her parents both passed away. She was with her grandfather ever since she was young, and both she and her grandfather were Chinese. On the other hand, Bro Flat Top was from the independent state, and her parents were both alive. No matter how you thought about it, she and Bro Flat Top couldn't be the same person. Moreover, Yi Wanwan couldn't find it in herself to believe that she'd be a vicious and evil criminal like Bro Flat Top before she lost her memory. She never imagined her previous self as someone who was wicked to the bone. The inside of the building was swarming with the elite members of the Fearless Alliance. They all called out 7th Master when they saw 7-Star. It looked like 7-Star might be young, but he had quite a high position in the internal management of the Fearless Alliance. Yi Wanwan was curious about this youth's charm and capabilities. Sister, wait here for a moment. 7-Star led Yi Wanwan to an empty conference room as he told Yi Wanwan. Chapter 1291. 1291 Go on. Yi Wanwan waved her hand, wishing nothing more than for 7-Star to go as far away as possible, so that it'd be easier for her to escape. It was utterly unrealistic for her to escape under 7-Star's nose. She couldn't beat him or escape. It was awful. After 7-Star left the conference room, he called for several elite members of the Fearless Alliance and ordered, "Watch the person inside. If you lose her, you'll be responsible." 7-Star then turned around and left. Inside the conference room, Yi Wanwan had a deep frown on her face. She was situated more than 20 floors above the ground, so escaping from the window was clearly unrealistic. As for the door, elite martial artists from the Fearless Alliance were guarding it. Soon, Yi Wanwan gathered her thoughts and calmed herself down so she could analyze the current situation. 7-Star didn't seem to believe she was the president of the Fearless Alliance, Bro Flat Top, from the start. But if he didn't believe her, why did he take her back to the Fearless Alliance's headquarters? Wouldn't killing her on the spot and being rid of this trouble immediately be better? Yi Wanwan ended up deciding that 7-Star was dubious about her identity. He didn't completely believe her or completely doubt her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought her to the Fearless Alliance's headquarters. Based on logic, 7 Star's next step would be to use his own methods to verify her identity. Yuanwan didn't know anything about Bro Flat Top or Fearless Alliance. She was a tiger made of glue and paper that would rip with a single poke. If she was ripped, her poor life would be lost. She had no idea how 7 Star was planning to verify her identity, so she couldn't brace herself for it at all. She would have to improvise and counter every move as she encountered it. Her fate would be decided today. Right now, Yuanwan had no choice but to imagine herself as the ruthless and savage Bro Flat Top and put herself into those shoes. Plus, she had to act natural and couldn't be too exaggerated. Thankfully, her acting skills were quite decent since she did produce 1 Best Actress and 2 Best Actors. The only difference was that Luo Chun and Gong Su acted for an audience. If they didn't act well, they'd merely be roasted and insulted. As for her, she was acting for the Fearless Alliance of the independent state. If she didn't act well, she'd lose her life. After mentally preparing herself, Yuanwan managed to completely immerse herself into Bro Flat Top's role, and turned herself into someone evil and merciless, an icy feeling emanating from her face. A moment later, a fashionable woman with a sweet appearance entered the conference room with large strides. "Ah, Xiao Fengfeng, you're back. Where did you run off to all these years?" The woman walked to Yuanwan, and didn't give her any time to react before hugging her. Despite being abruptly hugged, Yuanwan calmly looked at this woman and chuckled but didn't say anything. She was smiling on the outside but was spitting a myriad of curses on the inside. "Who the heck is this? Quick, tell me. Where did you run off to all these years? You made us search for you for so long." The woman soon asked hastily as she released Yuanwan. Yuanwan chose a safe response. "I ran into some unexpected situations when I went home to visit my parents, but they've been resolved." As Yuanwan said that, she surreptitiously examined this woman. She could tell that this woman probably had a good relationship with Bro Flat Top. Otherwise, she wouldn't have acted like this, considering Bro Flat Top's status as the Fearless Alliance's president. Hence, Yuanwan eased her tone. Careful observation was Yuanwan's only weapon to preserve her life right now. Chapter 1292. "Ah, you are so unruly. A mere accident caused us to worry for so many years. 7 Star and Big Dipper won, those brats. We missed you every day. Back then, they were turning the independent state upside down to find you, but you didn't even give us a call. How heartless." Although the woman said this, her eyes were incredibly gentle. Then she casually looked at her chest before saying with a smile, "You've transformed quite a bit these past years. If it weren't for 7 Star saying you were back, I definitely wouldn't have recognized you." Without waiting for Yuanwan to respond, she excitedly hugged Yuanwan and tousled her roughly. As she was embraced by this soft and warm person, Yuanwan's lips twitched imperceptibly. Isn't this too intimate? Could she be using the honeypot trap against me?" What Yuanwan didn't notice was how the other woman's gaze surreptitiously landed on Yuanwan's messed-up neckline. When the woman saw the half-hidden crescent birthmark, obvious surprise and joy surfaced in her eyes. Yuanwan wore a faint smile that looked intimate, but she knew full well that this woman was probably here to test her. Box Nouvelle Coem. "All right, I'm a bit tired. You should go back," Yuanwan calmly said. All right. Xiaofeng, rest for a bit." The woman nodded with a faint smile and turned to leave. Outside the conference room, 7 Star leaned against the wall with his eyes closed, deep in thought. 7 Star. Soon, the woman walked out of the conference room and looked at 7 Star. "Autumn Water, what did you think?" 7 Star calmly asked, his eyes closed. "That woman is Xiaofeng," the woman said. Upon hearing that, 7 Star's eyes, which were bright like the stars, suddenly opened. Really? A ripple finally traversed through 7 Star's eyes. Autumn Water had an extremely good relationship with the president, and she was one of the few people who had ever seen the president's birthmark. As for the others, they either unfortunately died in battle, or were still held captive by other factions these past years. "It's true." Autumn Water nodded, her tone certain. "All right, Sister Autumn Water, I understand." Before Autumn Water could respond, Seven Star entered the conference room and closed the heavy doors. Inside the conference room, confusion rose in Seven Star's eyes as he looked at the girl sitting in her chair. Sis Feng, where did you go this whole time? Seven Star asked aloofly. Yuan, this again. Enough already. How the heck should I reply? Bro Flat Top, where the heck did you go? Do I need to report to you about my whereabouts? Yuan sat on the sofa sloppily. Of course Sis Feng doesn't need to report her whereabouts to me. Seven Star walked toward Yuan and also sat down on the sofa. Seven Star added, this time, if you leave without saying anything again, the Fearless Alliance will find you even if we have to dig 3 feet under the ground. Unless you leave the independent state. Yuan's face chilled when she heard that, her heart festering with complaints she couldn't voice. Seven Star is fucking pushing me to my death. With Fearless Alliance's power in the independent state, it really would be that easy for them to find a person. So even if she ran, she'd probably be found by the Fearless Alliance again. As for leaving the independent state, first of all, she didn't have money. Second of all, she didn't have a passport or ID card. How the heck would she leave? Should she really swim back through the sea? Chapter 1293. Oh. Yuan's lips turned up with a cold smile, and her eyes were imposing and oppressive. Seven Star, are you threatening me? Sis Feng, I'm just worried about you, Seven Star replied expressionlessly. Mind your own business. You aren't qualified to worry about my business. Do you understand? Yuan coldly asked. Seven Star was silent for a few seconds before answering. I understand, Sis Feng. Sis Feng. At this time, the conference room's door was suddenly opened, and a handsome, extraordinary-looking man wearing a flirtatious rose-pink dress shirt sauntered into the room. Big Dipper, I'm talking to Sis Feng right now, Seven Star said frostily when he saw the man. Bastard. What's more important than me seeing Sis Feng? Big Dipper quickly walked up and shoved Seven Star away before taking his place next to Yuan. Sis Feng, it really is you. That's great. Where did you run off to party all these years? Even if you didn't contact them, you should have at least contacted me. Big Dipper looked at Yuan with concern brimming in his eyes. Yuan. Another younger brother? Why the heck did Bro Flat Top have so many brothers? I had some personal business, Yuan said with a light chuckle. Forget it. You've always been nomadic and hard to find. You mustn't go out and party again now that you're back. If you still want to go out and party, remember to take me, Big Dipper cheerfully said. Yuan was rather speechless. Just how much did the people from the Fearless Alliance like to party? Back then, Big Dipper saw Autumn Water and learned from her that Yuan was Bro Flat Top, so he wasn't as cautious about Yuan's identity as Seven Star, and didn't have any suspicions. Before Yuan could say anything, Big Dipper quickly said, Sis Feng, did you know? During the years you were gone, Heavenly Pavilion obtained a lot of fresh goods, including the ones you like. Let's go together when you have time. Heavenly Pavilion. Yuan didn't know what Heavenly Pavilion was but could only nod and say, sure. I said I still have business to discuss with Sis Feng. Seven Star's eyes chilled. Oh. Big Dipper stood up with a smile on his face. Suddenly, Big Dipper grabbed Seven Star's lapels. Why are you so fucking annoying? What kind of fucking act are you putting on with that corpse face of yours? Let me go. Seven Star's tone resembled millennium-old ice. What? You want to fight me? My hands are itching to go. Big Dipper turned his neck. If you want to fight, go outside to fight, Yuan coldly said from the sofa. Sis Feng. Big Dipper resentfully turned toward Yuan. What? You didn't hear what I said? Yuan asked. Humph. Big Dipper snorted and released Seven Star. He sat back down angrily. Sis Feng, you're so biased. He was clearly the one who started it. Before Yuan could respond, Seven Star stood up and headed out of the conference room. Without looking back, he said, Big Dipper, follow me. Sis Feng, see, it's him who wants to provoke me. If he's missing a limb later, don't feel bad for him. Then Big Dipper charged outside on Seven Star's tail. Yuan acted cold, but was actually terrified to death on the inside. Neither Big Dipper nor Seven Star was easy to fool. Big Dipper especially probably only misbehaved like that in front of Bro Flat Top. If facing an outsider, he would also probably tear them up without a bone left. However, she'd entered the tiger's den already, so it wouldn't be easy for her to escape. From the looks of it, Big Dipper believed in her identity a lot, but Seven Star. Outside the conference room, Big Dipper looked at Seven Star, and was about to attack when Seven Star uttered, "Idiot! What did you say?" Veins popped out of Big Dipper's forehead. "That woman might not be the real deal," Seven Star said. "Might not be real?" Big Dipper was briefly startled before he sneered. "Don't joke with me. She is Sis Fong. How could I mistake someone else for Sis Fong?" He and Sis Fong were sworn brothers who fought together, picked up girls together, and visited brothels together. They'd give up their lives for each other. He didn't know why, but that woman gave him the feeling that she was Sis Fong. Moreover, Autumn Water confirmed it already, so there couldn't be a mistake. Chapter 1294. 1294. Seven Star dryly glanced at Seven Star and snorted. He didn't say anything else to Big Dipper and turned to leave. "Seven Star, you dare to look down on me?" Big Dipper heatedly chased after him. Yi Wanwan finally relaxed upon seeing Seven Star and Big Dipper leaving. Thankfully, not everyone was so hard to fend off. From the current looks of it, she didn't need to worry about Big Dipper. The main problem was Seven Star, but there were probably other people aside from Seven Star to worry about. Thankfully, Seven Star couldn't completely deny she was Bro Flat Top. She would be dead already otherwise. An unknown amount of time passed before a knock was heard from the conference room's door. Yi Wanwan straightened up and calmly called out, "Enter." Dozens of people entered the conference room. "Greetings, President." The members of the Fearless Alliance had different expressions on their faces when they saw Yi Wanwan, but they all saluted her. Yi Wanwan calmly nodded as a greeting. These dozens of people were probably the senior management of the Fearless Alliance. How could they have a low status in the Fearless Alliance if they came to personally greet the president of the Fearless Alliance, Bro Flat Top? "President, it's truly great that you're back." After President went missing, the other major factions looked down on our Fearless Alliance more and more. Especially in recent years, because our president isn't here, a lot of branches betrayed the Fearless Alliance, causing the Fearless Alliance's power to lessen. "President, what do you think we should do?" A middle-aged man wearing a suit asked Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan's expression didn't change. Seven Star probably sent these people to test her again. If she was really Bro Flat Top, she would have her own type of solution. But if she was fake, the slightest carelessness would expose her identity. Yi Wanwan icily assessed the middle-aged man. "A bunch of garbage." Her audience all jumped. "I merely left for a few years, but you caused the Fearless Alliance to degenerate and weaken to this extent? Aren't you ashamed to ask me what we should do?" Yi Wanwan coldly rebuked them and harshly slapped the end table. "Pardon this subordinate, President." This subordinate was useless. Cold sweat seeped onto the middle-aged man's forehead, and he didn't dare to say anything else. "President. He can't be blamed. After all, you were gone for so long, President. Some enemy factions saw that you weren't here, so they schemed against us, and there are also those traitorous branches. We're at our wits' end." An elderly man said coldly. "What? You're shoving all the blame onto me? It's because of me that the Fearless Alliance declined, is that right?" Yi Wanwan turned to the elderly man. This subordinate wouldn't dare. "I didn't intend on blaming President either. I was just telling the truth," the elderly man said. "Heh." An icy smile curled up on Yi Wanwan's lips. "Don't find an excuse for your mediocrity and uselessness, understand?" The corners of the elderly man's lips twitched, but he nodded in the end. "I understand. All right. Make a list of those branches who turned traitorous and those factions who dared to provoke Fearless Alliance these past years and give it to me," Yi Wanwan coldly ordered. "Is the president planning to seek retribution from those traitorous branches and opposing factions?" Big Dipper turned to Yi Wanwan. "I have my own plans," Yi Wanwan coldly replied. Chapter 1295. Yi Wanwan gained a basic understanding of Fearless Alliance and the creature, Bro Flattop. The president of the Fearless Alliance was named Bro Flattop, so she must be someone extremely arrogant and despotic. If she discovered branches that originally belonged to the Fearless Alliance betrayed them and enemy factions provoked them after she came back, how could she tolerate that? There would definitely be a giant purge and crusade for retribution. We'll talk about everything else tomorrow. Leave. Yi Wanwan impatiently waved her hand when she saw another person about to speak. Everyone looked at each other, bewildered, but since Yi Wanwan made the command, it wasn't appropriate for them to say anything else, so they had to bid farewell and leave. A moment later, Big Dipper was the only one left in the giant conference room. Box Nouvelle Coem. Sisfong. I have a matter to report to you. Big Dipper sat down easily next to Yi Wanwan. What is it? Yi Wanwan asked. Sisfong, before you left Fearless Alliance, didn't you tell me to help you find piece of shit? Big Dipper said with a chuckle. Yi Wanwan was startled. This name was rather special. Sisfong, I say that we should forget about this matter. It's not a big deal for us to take a small loss. Big Dipper looked at Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan was pensive. Could it be that Bro Flattop ate some losses under that piece of shit's hand back then? If that was true, Bro Flattop probably wouldn't take it lying down with his personality. Tell me, Yi Wanwan said. Sisfong, piece of shit is an absolute lunatic. You just had to provoke him back then. And were crushed by him in one move. 2 years ago, I got news about piece of shit, so I brought a group of people to seek vengeance. That lunatic nearly massacred the whole group. Thank God I ran fast enough. Sisfong, you said it yourself, even your master might not beat him. Also, piece of shit nearly extinguished an ancient recluse clan all by himself some time ago. Big Dipper's expression shifted minutely every time he mentioned piece of shit. Sisfong, say you can't beat piece of shit, but you won't accept it. You don't know his name, so you forcefully call him piece of shit. Say, if piece of shit knew your nickname for him, would he come and extinguish our Fearless Alliance? Big Dipper added with a nervous look. Yi Wanwan might look calm on the surface, but a large storm was surging inside her head. Sent Bro Flattop crashing to the floor in a move, and nearly massacred Big Dipper's group. Plus, he nearly destroyed an ancient clan of the independent state all by himself. What the heck was piece of shit? Was he a boss? The top-tier kind? So what? Yi Wanwan acted stubbornly. She wasn't the president of the Fearless Alliance, so piece of shit wouldn't look for her when he came to seek trouble later. I reckon no one could beat piece of shit in the independent state. Sisfong, it's already been so many years, how about we forget it? Otherwise, if you're pressed to the ground and are beaten by piece of shit again, the Fearless Alliance would lose face too. Big Dipper was somewhat exasperated. My business with piece of shit can't be forgotten so easily. Yi Wanwan snorted. Oh, that's good. Coincidentally, we got news a few days ago that piece of shit is in the independent state. How about this? I'll tell someone to invite piece of shit to come and fight with you one-on-one, Sisfong. Sisfong, we can't act the same as back then. You didn't beat him one-on-one, so you ambushed him with a group of people. It'd be fine if the ambush was successful, but the people you recruited, Sisfong, were all sent flying to the ground. It was too shameful, Big Dipper said. Yi Wanwan. She didn't know Bro Flattop was actually so shameless. She couldn't win one-on-one, so she mobilized the Fearless Alliance to gang fight. What was more frightening was that they were all beaten black and blue by piece of shit. Sisfong, I'll tell someone to invite piece of shit over. Big Dipper prepared to leave. Hold on. Yi Wanwan grasped Big Dipper's wrist and pulled him back to the sofa. I just returned, so I still have a lot of things to take care of in the Fearless Alliance. I don't have time right now. We'll discuss it later, Yi Wanwan said. Did Big Dipper have a screw loose? He clearly knew Bro Flattop couldn't defeat piece of shit, but still wanted to invite him. Why the fuck? Even Bro Flattop didn't win, let alone her. If Big Dipper really invited him to fight her, what would she do? Chapter 1296. Weird. Sisfong actually didn't want to fight when she could? However, Big Dipper thought it made sense when he thought about it. He nodded and said, "True, there's a lot of matters in the Fearless Alliance that require your attention. We'll invite him later, and ignore the outside world for now. The inner workings of the Fearless Alliance are of top priority." Yi Wanwan's eyes shifted when she heard that. She was utterly clueless about the Fearless Alliance's inner workings, but she fortunately could learn about it in detail through Big Dipper today. "Sis Feng, you were gone for so many years. That group of old geezers thought you were dead already. Those old geezers knew you came back, but not a single one came to see you today. They're utterly disrespecting you." Big Dipper snorted. Yi Wanwan previously heard that the Fearless Alliance was divided into two factions. The old geezers Big Dipper mentioned had to be the other faction of the Fearless Alliance. They not only didn't come to see you, Sis Feng, but they insisted that Sis Feng must be a fraud. They want to thoroughly investigate the matter and eliminate you. Big Dipper continued upon seeing Yi Wanwan's silence. Yi Wanwan was suffering silently. "How miserable, I really am a fraud. Compile the information of those people in detail and give it to me tomorrow," Yi Wanwan said calmly. "Sis Feng, I've compiled it already. I was just waiting for you to say that. However, you just returned, so even if you wanted to reorganize the internal system, it'd be best for you to slowly proceed. If you shred all pretenses with those old geezers right now, it wouldn't be a good thing. First of all, whether you'd win or not is one matter. Second of all, there are many fractions outside who are eyeing us covetously," Big Dipper explained. Big Dipper's reminder was unnecessary. She wasn't an idiot, so why would she start a war against those old geezers? Right now, her top priority was to make the entire Fearless Alliance believe she was Bro Flat Top. Otherwise, she'd die very tragically. "Sis Feng, it's late. How about I drive you home?" Big Dipper stood up and looked at Yi Wanwan. "Sure, drive me home." Yi Wanwan nodded. She was waiting for Big Dipper to say that. How could she know where Bro Flat Top lived? She couldn't stay the night here, right? If Seven Star and the others discovered she didn't go home all night, their suspicions of her would probably intensify. A moment later, Yi Wanwan entered Big Dipper's car. About half an hour later, Big Dipper led Yi Wanwan to an extremely remote suburb. A manor sat there extremely conspicuously. "Sis Feng, what were you thinking back then? Why did you insist on buying this mansion?" Big Dipper stopped the car and felt chills running down his back as he looked at this mansion. "I think it's rather nice." Yi Wanwan didn't know the meaning behind Big Dipper's question, so she had to answer like that. "Sis Feng, this is an infamous haunted house. A dismembered body case happened there, and rumors report frequent ghost sightings. Only you dare to buy it and live there. You truly deserve to be my Sis Feng. You're awesome." Big Dipper turned to give Yi Wanwan a thumbs up. Yi Wanwan was startled when she heard that. Her face looked calm, but she was cursing Bro Flat Top and her ancestors left and right in her mind. Was this Bro Flat Top fucking out of her mind and crazy? She bought a haunted house to live in? And a dismembered body case even happened there. Was this a freaking place suitable for human habitation? Yi Wanwan didn't know whether it was a psychological effect, but she felt an eerie wind brushing past her as she stood in front of the mansion's doors. She turned cold from her neck to her toes. She swore she didn't want to go inside at all, nor did she want to stay even a second at this freaking place. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.